Caitlin's artwork, The Decision, is the District 5 winner. Unfortunately, Caitlin was not able to attend. Ashanti Major. Ashanti's Water Wars is the overall winner. And the grand prize winner is Ariel Speed. Ariel's powerful beauty, made of paper quilling technique, will be displayed in the U.S. Capitol from June 2022 to June 2023. Their principal, Principal Turner, and teacher facilitator, Dr. Kesling, joined them today for this recognition. Please join us in congratulating these students. This concludes this evening's recognitions.
Can we have one more round of applause for these amazing students in our school? Great work happening all around. Let's go ahead and move on to the approval of the July 11th, 2022 agenda. The Duval County School Board approved the July 11th, 2022 agenda as submitted on July 1st. Ask for a motion.
So moved.
Moved by Board Member Anderson, second by Board Member Jones. Any discussion?
Yes.
Board Member Pearson.
Board Member Willie, I move that we suspend the rules and amend the consent agenda in order to consider policy 2.26, board member meeting protocol and format, out of order.
We have a motion by Board Member Pearson to suspend the rules and amend consent agenda in order to consider policy 2.26 out of order. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Board Member Hershey. Call for your vote. And we'll do a hand vote for this. Call for your vote on that motion. All those in favor? All right. By your action, this motion carries 7-0. So the motion carries and the July 11th agenda as has been amended, has been approved. Your action has been approved. The motion carries. We will now move to that, to actually close out the agenda. So now we need to vote on the actual agenda. Any other further discussion?
No, we gotta vote on that.
The agenda as amended.
Yes. Move to vote on the agenda as amended. Any discussion on that? Okay, now we'll move to vote on the agenda as amended. We're going to move to a hand vote for this, and we're voting on the motion to approve the agenda as amended. So all those in favor with a hand vote, raise your hand. All right. By your action, you have carried that item 7-0. Because of that amendment, we'll now move to that item 2.26, and I'll have, that is public hearing and vote revisions to Chapter 2 Board Policy, and I'll have Dr. Green read the recommendation.
Public hearing and vote revisions to Chapter 2 Board Policies. That the Duval County School Board conduct a public hearing and vote to adopt the recommended revisions and/or addition of the following policy in School Board Manual, Chapter 2. Policy 2.26, Board Meeting Protocol and Format.
All right, we'll open the public hearing. Is there anyone who wishes to speak? I see some folks. If you are wishing to speak to this item 2.26, please come down. And state your name for the record for us.
Sure. Good evening. I'm Rebecca Nathanson. I'm here on behalf of Moms for Liberty Duval. I'm here just to oppose the policy 5.27. I just would like to ask the board to consider.
Right.
That's the wrong one.
Is there a problem?
It's not right.
Yeah, this is a public hearing on the policy 2.26.
Wrong policy. Okay.
Okay.
I'll come back.
Other folks here for 2.26?
Hi, my name is Margaret Yarbrough, and I oppose changes to policy 2.26 for speaking protocol. Public comment time should not be limited based on number of speakers, which in turn limits our speech. Paid school board members should be able to go late once a month to hear their constituents' concerns. This is your job. On the other hand, for the community to take the time to research issues, prepare comments, and come to long meetings without pay is a bit of a sacrifice. Not knowing what the time limits will be in advance is an inconvenience as well and can make preparation a challenge for these meetings. Maybe if the school board had voted to approve the resolution in the first place, in compliance with state law, there wouldn't be long comment sessions. So I just please vote no on 2.26. Thank you.
Thank you. Other folks for 2.26?
Hello, my name is Darlene Miller, and I'm here to also oppose the changes to the plan. Now, it doesn't happen often. I've been here for 6 years. It doesn't really happen that often that you are here till 1 or 2 in the morning. The public comes out. I was here till 11:30 one night to speak and to hear others speak. Got up to go to work the next morning. And some people were here till 1 a.m. or 2 a.m. and got up and went to work the next day. I have been addressing the board through public comments for a long time now, and I will tell you there are times my husband and I have passed off notes to each other because the 3 minutes wasn't quite long enough. And I understand that sometimes you have 100 speakers or 140 speakers, and most of them on one topic. Was that bury the other topics or bury the other issues? Sometimes as a parent, when you're up here trying to explain the situation, you need more than 3 minutes. And as the lady before me said, you are elected officials. It doesn't happen that often, and I am requesting that you do not vote on that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Other folks speaking to 2.26?
Good evening. My name is Tim Miller. I'm also opposed to this change. My wife and I both, we've been up here speaking for a number of years now, and most of you guys know we're usually not here on the topic of the day. So there might be 100 speakers, 90 of them on the same thing. Normally, mine's not. Mine's always ESE, right? Like 90% of the time. So if there are 90 people that want to talk about something, school name changes or whatever the case may be, that was brought out a lot of people, that means my concerns, completely unrelated to the other 99, are limited to 1 minute. That is not a lot of time. It takes half that time to come up here, say your name, and get started. So to get everybody down to 1 minute just because there are a lot of comments, I don't think is reasonable. I don't think it's fair to the public, and I think it limits your information that you're receiving from the public to understand and to do your work. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak to 2.26? Thank you. We'll close the public hearing. Ask for a motion.
So moved.
Moved by Board Member Pearson. Second by Board Member Anderson. Are there any board members who wish to speak to this item? Board Member Joyce.
Yes, thank you. I have been a part of this board for the last 4 years. And over that time, we have received we have had some pretty controversial issues that's been presented before the board. And we've always taken the time to listen, whether it would be at a community meeting or at this board meeting, to the concerns of our community. I believe that changing this policy, especially at this time, really sets a bad precedent in our community, that we are trying to limit the conversation around items that affect their families and their children. And so for that reason, I am going to vote no about concerning this change.
Thank you. Board Member Jones?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's always very sensitive when you change the public comment time that's given. So I do have that concern. I'm very sensitive to the concern that people have because we were elected to listen to them. And I don't take that lightly, irrespective of their position or whether I support it or not. But I will add that the concern I have is for people who take the time to come down, and because the meeting ran late, they left, and we didn't hear from them at all. So that group of people, I think Board Member Pearson made a very good point. We want to hear from everyone, and this gives an opportunity to hear for all those who want to speak, albeit may be limited less than 3 minutes, but at least we hear from those who've taken the time to join us at this meeting, and perhaps they wouldn't have to stay till 1 o'clock in the morning and be heard. So because of that, I will support the policy change, but I caution that we don't want to send a message that we're trying to restrict or limit public comment. I think this broadens the variety of comments that we will get.
Thank you. Board Member Hershey?
I just would like to echo what Board Member Jones said, and that, there are legislative bodies that say you can only speak about what's on the agenda. This does not restrict what's on the agenda. There are legislative bodies that say you can only speak to if it's an item on the agenda during the public hearing portion, and so it's even more restricted, and then they even allot a specified amount of time if you want to talk about anything other than that. This does not do that. This does not limit or restrict anybody from speaking, I'm going to say, off topic of the agenda, what would be voted on. And I do think that it is a good way to give everyone an opportunity to speak who is present. And I think that this is a much better approach than we have had some boards across the state of Florida who have turned off the mic if they've been off topic. I think that that's disrespectful. I think that this policy change gives everyone an opportunity to speak to the board. Certainly, that's the night of the vote, but there's also the workshop and committee meetings that we have that we are available for prior to this, and other means of communication through email and telephone calls. So I like this better than turning off a microphone because somebody's not talking on topic. And I also appreciate that this does not restrict the topic that someone talks on, because we and other legislative bodies do limit it to what's on the agenda. So I would just like to make that point. It's not taking away the opportunity for people to speak, is providing a time for everybody to speak, and there's not a limit on this. It doesn't say that it's only going to go for 2 hours. And I have 4 children, and I have come out before in the past and sat in the audience to speak, and at that time the board had a policy of we're allotting 30 minutes for conversation, and it was packed and overflowing. So I do not think that this is inconsiderate. I do think it's a way to allow everyone who shows up the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Board Member Hershey. Other Board Member Pearson?
So I'm the one who brought this policy to the board, and the heart behind it is before I ran for the board, when I was a very engaged parent volunteer and starting to learn about what was going on in the county, I started showing up and speaking places and had a variety of experiences with that, with not knowing where I fit in on an agenda, and even as a board member, showing up somewhere and thinking it was my turn to speak and then being told to sit down, and then standing up again and being told, no, we're not ready for you, and sitting down. So I feel like this is not confusing, which I didn't want it to be confusing to people. But even now as a board member, because I have this past year had 3 children in school, and we'll have 2, and my kids play sports, and we're just an active family. I am doing what I think a lot of people who show up here to speak are doing, where I am running to pick kids up from practice, getting them delivered at home, making sure there's something for them to eat, getting people settled, and then racing here in order to be in my seat by 6 o'clock. And I have a lot of empathy for parents who may be in that same position where they are picking kids up, getting them settled, and if you have younger, my kids are older, so I can just give them directions and kind of expect them to follow those directions. But if you have younger children, you may not be able to stay till 2. You may really, like 8:39 might be your cutoff because you need to be home for bedtime. And so I'm trying to be sensitive to those parents so that if we have a large number of speakers, we have a greater opportunity for us to hear from more people. And it really doesn't matter to me what your topic is. It's just being able to hear from the people who take the time to show up. The other thing is, I know that there are some people who can show up at 5, and there's some people who are skating in right at 6:20. And I don't think one person's public comment or input is any more valid than another. If you are coming from work and you bust your tail to get here by 6:20 and you make it in by the deadline, you deserve to be heard. And you deserve to be heard, I think, at a reasonable time and not expecting you to stay till 12 or 1. So this was not intended to disenfranchise anyone, and actually, in my mind, I think it will give more people an opportunity to be heard. And that was the heart behind it.
Thank you, Board Member Pearson. Vice Chair?
Two items. One, I wanted to echo your sentiments about the younger children, the parents of younger children, because I have had a number of parents of younger children who barely got here and then couldn't stay till 1 o'clock. So I really appreciate you bringing that out. And then my second item, I just want to thank you for your leadership on this item and make sure the public knows that this is not something that was just created or whatever, that you had truly done research. You've talked to Florida School Board Association. You've looked at how different cities handle it. And so I just appreciate the diligence that you put into the item so that we have a policy that's thoughtful in nature. So I just wanted to thank you for your efforts.
Thank you, thank you. Yes, thank you for bringing this forward for discussion. It is a bit sensitive, but I think at least the number of times that I've been on the board, and I don't think we've ever heard everybody if it goes too late. So this actually gives more people an opportunity to actually be heard for that amount of time. And as always, we're more than open. You can always submit your written responses to us as a board and some of the other venues and avenues for that as well. So do appreciate you bringing that this forward and us having this discussion because it's really important, especially right now. So if there's no further discussion, I will call for your vote. And we're going to do a hand vote for this too. So all those in favor, show by raise of hand. All those opposed? All right, that motion passes 5-2. We're now on to the chair report. I don't have a formal PowerPoint, but just want to make a mention of a few things. Number one, a lot of hard work went into it. I know we saw school grades come out, so I want to commend the superintendent and all the hard work that went into the work that goes on in our schools. So thank you for that effort, and the principals and the staff, and most importantly, the students who have worked really diligently to ensure that they're learning every single day and putting their best foot forward. Also want to just thank this board too. I was out last board meeting, and the amazing vice chair got some practice sitting in this seat. So thank you so much for filling in, and the rest of the board too. I was watching on TV, and what a great meeting you ran. So thank you to that. And last, we do have an election coming up, and there's a 1 mil referendum on the ballot. So we do just want to make mention of that. We care about our teachers. Our teachers are the heartbeat of what we do here in Duval County, and they deserve every single thing that we can give to them. And this 1 mil provides teachers with an opportunity to get some increased salary. And we want to be really mindful of that as we're going into the election on August 23rd. Lots of other things happening in that election as well, but want to make sure that that's at the top of people's minds, especially as we move forward, because our teachers, once again, you've seen it in the media, we have a lot of competition with other counties, other states, corporations, and this is one thing of the many things that we're doing as a district to ensure that we're telling our teachers that you're valued, you're appreciated, and we care about you, and this is one way to show that. So just wanted to make mention of that too. So that's all for me, and I'll switch it over to the superintendent for the superintendent's report. Dr. Green?
Thank you, Chairman Willie. My report will cover 2 topics, school grades and teacher vacancies. So as we move into a presentation for school grades, believe it or not, we've not made this presentation in 3 years. The last official school grades we received were 2018-19. Our comparison will mostly be to the 2018-19 because by definition, those were our official last grades. Even though last year schools could choose to receive a school grade in those individual schools, if something has changed, we show it in the presentation. But as a district and all other schools, 2018-19 is the official last school grade. When we look at our school grades, for our traditional schools, our traditional public schools, we had 37 A's, 27 B's, 64 C's, and 10 D's, and 0 F schools. In 2018-19, 88% of our schools were A, B, or C. Based on the 21-22 and 22-20, I'm already in next year, 21-22, we have increased that to 93%. In 2018, we had 17 D schools and no F schools, and that has dropped now to 10 D schools and still no F traditional public schools. When we look at those A-rated schools, it is amazing that 35 of our schools across all districts, all board member districts, maintain that A from 2018-19 to this past school year. I am not going to go through each district, but do want to point out that we were very proud that every district had representatives that was an A in 2018-19 and maintained that A. With the exception of District 6, Ruth and Upston Elementary. In 2018, it was a B-rated school. The year in 2021, when schools could choose a grade, they chose a grade because they went up to an A. And then again, this past school year, it maintained an A. So that's why Ruth Upston, you'll see B, A, A. That's an example of choosing a grade in the year that district grades weren't given unless you chose to receive it. We had 17 schools increase from 2018-19 to current year 21-22. Parkwood Heights out of District 1 from a C to a B. District 3, Brookview Elementary and Southside Middle. Brookview went from a C to a B. Southside went from a D to a C. District 4, we had Highlands Middle and Ocean Way Elementary and Pine Estates Elementary go up. Highlands Middle and Pine Estates both were D's in 18-19. Both of them went up to a C. And Ocean Way went from a B to an A. District 5, as you can see, had the most schools to increase at least one letter grade. George Washington Carver, Annie Morgan, Rufus Payne, Pinedale, Ramona Boulevard, Susie Talbert, all elementary schools went up at least one letter grade, with Rufus Payne moving from a C to a B. Pinedale Elementary in 2018, it was a D. In the year that you could opt in for a grade, they opted in for a higher letter grade of a C, and then again moved up another letter grade to a B. District 6, Chaffee Trail moved from a B to an A. West Riverside, same, they went from a C, then the year they could opt in, they went up to a B, and then this past year went from a B to an A. Westview Pre-K 8, amazing movement here, was a D in 2018, then opted the year we could opt in, went up to a C, and then from a C to a B. So it technically jumped 2 letter grades in 2 years of a pandemic. Here's the first time we've ever showcased our improvement ratings. Our alternative schools it didn't start until 2018-19, receiving what they call an improvement rating. You'll see in 2018-19 that we had 3 unsatisfactory school ratings for Alden Road, Mount Hermon, and Oak Hill, and we are now down to 1. Commendable means that they are performing higher than expected. Maintaining means they're performing where they are expected to perform. And so we will continue to work with our ESE center schools and our other schools that have alternative ratings to Academy. This board started that program maybe 5 years ago, and that program is to help students who are behind their cohort catch up to graduate on time. Bridge to Success outperforms all other alternative schools that do the same thing. We have charter schools that's their goal, to catch students up. And Bridge to Success Academy, just a year ago, had gotten their graduation rate up to 67%, which is amazing when they have students that are 2 to 3 years behind and helping them catch up and be able to graduate on time. So hopefully with Bridge, the things that are happening at Bridge to Success Academy, they're going to move to that commendable level. We are also just mere points away of Mount Hermon getting to that maintaining, but we will keep working and they will get to that maintaining and commendable status, we hope also. Marine Science Education Center, which is run by Fletcher High School. That is also an amazing program, has been for many years, where students who they pass all of the assessment portion of graduating. It's the credits that they need to either recover, but the Marine Science Education Center does a fabulous job by infusing marine science activities such as fishing, boating, teaching these young people other skills that are transferable into career jobs. They are at the commendable level and they do a fantastic job. So what I'm going to do is just basically break down for under each district. District 1, the main highlights. Lewis Sheffield was a B in 2018-19. Again, the year you could choose a grade. They accepted their grade of an A and then to maintain that A. As well as Parkwood Heights moving from a C to a B. We have seen the continued growth at the elementary level, though we still understand that we are struggling with literacy. Literacy will be something that we will continue to focus and put a lot of time and effort in trying to have the right resources, the best resources available for our teachers so that that is an area that we can continue to improve upon. Oops. District 2, as you can see, many of the schools maintained, they're either an A or B in District 2. All of those schools were A's in 2018-19, and the vast majority of them are A's in 2022. The 3 that dropped a letter grade dropped from an A to a B. Our schools that are rated A continue to show that the students that are struggling, that those are the students that we have to continue to focus on. They have great proficiency, but the learning gains of the students who are considered by state definition in the bottom quartile, that is what we have to continue to build up and continue to focus on those students, even though these schools are rated A. District 3, big highlight about Southside Middle School. Southside moved from a D to a C. Southside, if they would have made a D this year, they would have been in what is known as state turnaround. So we're very excited that they will not move into state turnaround and will be able to focus on continuing to improve their student achievement. And like to highlight Brookview Elementary moving from a C in 2018-19 to a B in 2022. District 4, want to highlight Highlands Middle School. Highlands Middle School was in state turnaround and needed to make a C rating to ensure that it wouldn't move to the next level of having to hire an external operator. Excuse me. Pine Estates, moving from a D to a C, and Ocean Way Elementary, improving from a B to an A. Thank you. District 5. District 5, in 2018, District 5 had 11 D schools. In District 5, you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 of them moved from a D, not 9, 8 of them moved from a D to a C, with George Washington Carver, Ramona Boulevard, and Susie Talbert exiting state turnaround. All 3 of those schools would have had an external operator if they had not garnered at least a C rating. So today, we will open up next school year with no schools in state turnaround. So all of our schools that were in state turnaround have exited. District 6. District 6 had 3 schools, again, West Riverside Elementary and Westview Pre-K-8 made gains every single year in the pandemic, in the third one, Ruth Upston Elementary. So we had 3 schools in District 6 that made a gain every single year. And that is definitely a feat that was very challenging. For our A-rated schools to maintain an A was definitely a challenge. And schools that were in the category of a D, it was very challenging to help move those schools so that they could either garner a C or higher. So we really want to give a shout out to Westview, West Riverside, and Ruth Upston Elementary. District 7, District 2 and District 7 are our highest performing districts. Under school board member districts. As I said, very challenging to maintain that A, and for 6 out of the 10 schools to continue maintaining an A is definitely a great feat. We did have one middle school drop from an A to a B, that was Mandarin Middle, and Mandarin High School maintained its B, and it is a half a point from an A. So it is under review. We did send it in as we want you to review this. Please find the half a point they need to make the A. Yes. So moving on to our charter schools. In 2018-19, 88% of our charter schools were A, B, or C. Unfortunately, this year in 21-22, this past school year, that decreased to 69%. In 2018-19, they only had 3 D or F schools, and that unfortunately has increased to 10 D or F schools. The letter grades progressed out. They have 7A, 7B, 8C, 8D, and 2F. We do want to highlight Duval Southside. It was a B in 2018-19 and improved to an A in 21-22. Any school that can maintain an A or a B from 2018 to present took a great deal of effort and support in students really showing what they've had to overcome. And so, as I want to point out, whether it's a charter or traditional, when they make that growth or maintain the A or B, we should be very proud of their efforts. So when we get a district grade, it is a combination of traditional and charter schools. So we are put together as a district. And when you look down at the bottom, that is our 2018-19. We garnered 673 points, which was 4 points from an A at 61%. In 2021, even though the district did not receive a district grade, if we did, we would have dropped to 594 points, which still is a B, but it was 83 points away from an A. And this past school year, as you can see, we've improved from the 594 to 648. We were 29 points short of an A. There are some highlights that I think are important. Our middle school acceleration, in 2021, it had dropped to 72%, and it is back to where it was in 18-19 at 80%. When you look at bottom quartile in math, it's the gold column. In 18-19, 46% of students in the bottom quartile in math had made a learning gain, and then it dropped to 34%. And then we went this past year, one of the biggest categories we made gains in is moving it to 49%. As I stated, literacy is still our issue. In 18-19, we had gotten to 50%. 2021 dropped to 46, even though we went up a point, 21-22, 47. It still shows that that is an area that has been a struggle for us as a school district, and we will continue to work to improve in that area. The second area that continues to be a struggle for our school district is science. It's only tested, I don't want to say it's only taught, it's only tested in 5th, 8th, and biology. Biology, we are actually ranked amongst the top school districts in biology, but in 5th and 8th, we continue to struggle, and we are continuing to try to figure out what is it that we can do. But I will tell you, science is highly correlated to reading because it is a reading test. And if you're struggling with reading, it would be a struggle to read a science test. Math, 2 years ago, I believe I shared with the board that math was the most challenged area. We were at 52%. I'm sorry, not 52. 58%. Math was our strength. And when the pandemic hit, math was the one area that was hit the hardest because students don't tend to practice math at home. They practice when they are in school, and many of our students were virtual and the challenges faced with that. And it is the area where we saw the greatest comeback back to the 18-19. So we were at 58, we dropped to 46, and we moved from 46 to 51. We still see math as our strength and that it will continue to flourish and grow because math is very concrete. 2 + 2 always equals 4. It doesn't change. But someone's perception about a poem or a perception about a piece of text, that's a lot more challenging to help students. Even if they are proficient readers, it is making sure that do they have the comprehension? Can they analyze? Can they summarize? All of those other skills that impact reading is not quite the same for math. Math, if you learn the prerequisite skills and you have mastered those prerequisite skills, it is much easier to help you learn more challenging content. So that is our presentation on school grades. Moving into vacancies, I have shared with the board over last year the challenge that we have had with teacher vacancies. In February, I think we hit our highest number of over 466 vacancies. And so the information I'm sharing with you today is where we stand today for vacancies for the upcoming school year. Currently today, we have 512 total vacancies. This chart kind of just shows the content areas that are impacted, and the number one area is elementary, pre-K to 5. We have over 160 vacancies. Now, we did receive some good news because I shared with the board that we anticipate the possibility of 200 additional vacancies because of not passing certification. And so that number has decreased. So now we're possibly only looking at 100 additional vacancies. So 712, moving now down to 612. So you've got to find the bright light somewhere. So that's where I'm finding it. That we may be looking only at 612 vacancies. We have never opened up the school year with that number of vacancies. I can't tell you the last time we've opened up the school year with 400 vacancies. It's been maybe the highest in the 300s. So this definitely will be very challenging for us and our students to open up with this many vacancies. Some of our schools have double-digit vacancies, and we needed to address this in a way that we have to be equitable across the district because we receive federal funding. We have to be what they call comparable. That means you have to fund or build staffing plans that are comparable around the district. And so with that, we are putting in a number of strategies to support our schools. We are adjusting our school allocation model, the formulas that we use to staff our schools to reduce vacancies. We are also using our instructional support positions to cover vacancies. District administrators, in the month of January, district administrators, we all went out a day a week to go out and substitute. Well, we will be starting that on the first week of school. And it will maintain throughout the year unless the vacancy issue improves. What I'd like to explain, even if we opened up with 600 vacancies, each day teachers are out, whether it's for medical reasons or other reasons. So 600 minus people just being out could be well over 1,200 vacancies a day. And we basically have taken the attitude, it is now, again, all hands on deck. Everyone has to go out and support our schools. And so part of that is also paying substitutes. As you know, by state law, we have a requirement to get to $15 by 2026 with substitutes that are under third party. Our school board employees, we're required to get to $15 an hour before 2026. And so tonight, I believe it's on the agenda that we are recommending raising the pay for substitutes so that we can work more on recruiting more substitutes as well as keeping retention of substitutes. So our goal is that we're going to open up close to normal, somewhere around 300 to 350 vacancies. That would be a normal year for DCPS. And so by implementing these strategies, we believe we can get to that point. We also will be, at the 10-day count, we will be have to come back and reevaluate. We might find that we can hire more teachers, or we might find that the vacancies are being filled, and then we can make adjustments on any of the strategies that we put in place. But to ensure that our schools open up and children are coming into classrooms with our highly effective teachers, because we know that that is a key point, that having a highly qualified teacher standing in front of students is what leads to student success. We would not have been able to make those moves during a pandemic without them. They are the key, along with our school leadership, who's in charge of running that school, hiring their teachers and support staff. It is critical for us. On a positive note, I kind of already talked about it. You have an agenda item for approval tonight with increasing compensation for substitutes. We know that they have increased their marketing and recruitment. They are been attending orientations, open houses to recruit parents. They've added both in-person and online training to continue to garner more substitutes that would be available for our classrooms. that was a little long. I apologize, Chairman Willie, but it was a lot we needed to talk about.
Quality information, so it's okay that it was long. And I'll just pause, and I mentioned it in my chair report, but I know the work that goes into those school grades is not, there's a lot that goes into them, whether maintaining or increasing and all that. So I just kudos to the staff, the students. Can we round of applause for the grades? And the fact that there are no entering into the school year with no schools in the sort of turnaround category is something that, I don't know if we've been in that place for, I don't know when the last time that was. So thank you, superintendent, staff, and students, and everybody who had a hand in doing that. So we appreciate that. And once again, we mentioned the mill and some other things, but the vacancy number is not just a Duval thing. It's not just a Florida thing. It's around the country. I was on a call with some board colleagues from different states, and we're all going through the same piece. So we need to do all that we can to support our teachers. If you see a teacher out and about, make sure you thank them. Every little bit helps to increase that for our teachers. So thank you to the teachers who are doing a phenomenal job. And hey, come on into Duval County if you're listening and looking. All right, we're going to move on to the public comments portion for this evening. We're now at the public comment portion. School board welcomes your comments on the matters that are before the board for consideration. It is not the board's intention to respond this evening, but to use the input in our deliberations. To give everyone appropriate respect and courtesy, we ask the audience to refrain from audible comments or applause. When you come to the microphone, please state your name for the record. The board will allocate time for public comment based on the number of speakers who have filled out speaker cards prior to the designated time. If 1 to 20 speakers have signed up to speak, each will be allotted 3 minutes. If 21 to 40 speakers have signed up to speak, each will be allotted 2 minutes. And if 41 or more speakers have signed up, each will be allotted 1 minute. Tonight we have 13 speakers, so each will be allotted 3 minutes to speak. When the green light in front of me starts blinking, you will have a minute remaining. When the light turns yellow, you will have 30 seconds remaining. When it turns red and the buzzer sounds, your time will be up. If your concerns exceed that time, you may present written comments to the board. Board policy provides for an orderly and efficient meeting without disruption by words or actions. You're asked to refrain from references to specific individuals and to follow expectations for civil discourse. In an effort to mitigate against the spread of COVID-19, we have placed hand sanitizer and disinfectant wipes at the podium. We ask that each speaker wipe down the microphone and podium before they address the board. Please remember that speaker cards were accepted until 6:20 p.m. We really want to thank you for taking time to address the board. I will turn it over to the vice chair, and she will get us going for our speakers this evening.
Thank you. I do want to make note that tonight, for the first time, we have redone our speaker cards, and that there was an option for people to speak, which we have 13 speakers. We do have 4 people who have waived their right to speak, but we will make sure we read their names and what they were waiving in opposition or support of, and I'll do that at the end. We will start with Ed Williams, followed by Rebecca Nathanson. And Mr. Williams, if you'll come to the podium for us, and Rebecca Nathanson, if you'll follow. And that'll be followed by Frank DeLong.
My name's Ed Williams, and I have no preferred pronouns, but I did want to talk about the change in policy for 5.27. I kind of feel that the changing that policy might not be in alignment with the parental rights law that's in place. I'm assuming that unless the parents have some sort of input into their children cutting class to go to protests, I don't know. But if that's the case, I think it would be good to vote no on that. And I am in opposition to that. And I was really glad to hear that the pay scale for the lower paid employees is going up. As we learned from a meeting or so ago, $15 isn't what it used to be. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now have Rebecca Nathanson, followed by Frank DeLong, followed by Rebecca Bellow.
Good evening. Sorry about the confusion earlier. I heard policy before and I ran up, didn't want to miss my chance. So sorry about that. My name is Rebecca Nathanson, and I'm here to oppose policy 5.27. I just asked the board to consider that student enrollment is dropping. We know teacher turnover is continuing to rise. I've spoken with a couple of board members, and I understand what you're trying to achieve with the policy, but parents are wondering who's going to be held accountable if this policy is not implemented correctly or if it's not complied with. Because we seem to see over and over again, if the district doesn't comply with policy, is anybody held accountable? So we're concerned about it. We're wondering, some of us are wondering how principals will decide whether to approve or decline student protests, which issues are approved as protest worthy. How are we going to decide that? I just want to know if you've considered the Pandora's box that is potentially going to be opened. And just curious if you've considered how this policy is going to affect your teachers and parents who do not want their students or themselves to feel coerced while they're at work or at school to become political activists. So those are some concerns that a lot of the parents in this community have, and I just ask you to consider that. We ask you to vote no on the 5.27. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now have Frank DeLong, followed by Rebecca Below, and then Darlene Miller.
Frank DeLong, Chairman at IBW 177. Did you know that, like a lot of people, my own son hears people talk but doesn't listen to what is said? Pay attention. Did you know that we're now 5 electricians, 4 plumbers, 6 utility workers, and now 14 AC mechanics short? That leaves 10 AC mechanics in the whole district. Plus, you got carpenters, painters, safety techs, and so on. Did you know that we contract out 92 schools to AC contractors at 4 times as much? We are not their only customer. Their response time is 2 to 3 days, and while you're here, could you look at this stuff? They don't do that. They charge extra for nuisance calls. My room is hot when everything is working. Did you know the President of the United States makes $400,000 a year, and $15 doesn't go as far as it used to? These guys can't even afford an electric bike, let alone an electric car. Did you know that when the phrase 2% is thrown out, that's 30 cents. So after 2 weeks, that's $24. So after taxes, all that extra money can buy you 2 gallons of milk or 2 gallons of gas. Did you know that if you talk to us, we would listen? Every one of you are welcome to come and talk to us about anything. Did you know that when reported that a vendor was price gouging us at double the price, we're told that there's nothing we can do as long as guys keep going there and buying stuff? Also, it's like when we told you that the Carpenters versus Allstate Construction, we could save the district $225,000 every 18 months. We heard crickets. Spend less, pay for more fair wages. Did you know that this did not happen overnight? The people who did this failed this district, they failed the community, they failed the taxpayers of Duval County. Did you know that the phrase for a lot of people for the district is, what do you care about? It's not your money. It is my money. It's everybody's money. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We'll now have Rebecca Below, and I am apologizing on your last name because I think I pronounced it correct, but you're going to get to state it for the record so everybody knows the right one.
It's like Rebecca Ballou.
There you go.
No worries. Hi, I'm Rebecca Ballou, and I am speaking to oppose 5.27. As a former speech and debate competitor, I can tell you that the education I gained from defending both sides of an issue helped me appreciate other people's viewpoints, any of the viewpoints that are differing. And I would say that if you can guarantee that students, number one, would have the parents' permission for an educational field trip to attend the protest, and 2, that the students must research and defend both points of view, that might be seen as an educational opportunity. I would be open to that. But one of my challenges or the problems is that it interferes with the operation of the school, which is how the rule is written currently, and it interferes with instructional time. Another problem is that these issues being protested tend to be very partisan, in direct violation of School Board Policy 4.10, which states, when addressing political issues as an objective of the instructional program, the positions of all parties will be presented on a nonpartisan basis. Partisan political literature will not be distributed in schools. I've seen some posters, little partisan. What I predict, based on violations related to recent student walkouts at Terry Parker, Sandalwood, Atlantic Coast, Mandarin, and Landon, is that teachers would broadcast their political views, as they have, over BLM and LGBTQIA issues. Students, in order to gain favor with those teachers or just to fit in, would begin parroting those same points of view. Allowing protests would violate several of school board policies, as well as Florida's principles of professional conduct, which set the standard that both district employees and students should not engage in political protests during school. I doubt that this district would be successful at ensuring students protesting during school hours would be fair and balanced, nonpartisan, or would comply with the existing rules. So I'm firmly against allowing students to protest during school hours. A word of advice: if you continue to turn our public schools into hotbeds of woke politics, you will continue to bleed out of both money and students to charter schools and to private schools, and you will deserve it. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now have Darlene Miller, followed by Tim Miller, followed by Dan Merkin.
Thank you. My name is Darlene Miller, and I have been addressing this board for the last 6-7 years. Now, when my children were in school, you know, both of them are out of school now, but when my youngest one was coming, and he is a person with autism, and he was having difficulties, and we were having difficulties with teachers, we were having difficulties with principals, and other things, my husband and I did actually, 7 years ago, go up the chains. Go up to your district people, go up to this, go. We finally came here. And we came here because nothing changed until we stepped to these podiums. If you had said something 8 years ago about the Millers' public speaking, you would have been laughed at. That's not in our nature, at least it wasn't. Now I come up here and I speak. And I do this because I just want to let you know, and granted, that was, you know, a couple of superintendents ago, but I think parents need some kind of way to escalate or tell people when nothing is happening. Now, I will commend the people that, when I have emailed the board about my son or whatever, and the people I have emailed me back. In fact, I've told people, oh, just email the board person. They'll, you know, get with it. When I've been told by 2 people now, but they never emailed me back. How am I supposed to know they did anything? So if you're encouraging people to email you, please be mindful that you really do need to let them know you have received their email and you're communicating with it. Another thing, I also have 2 friends that used to substitute in schools, and I say used to substitute. They actually did quit because when they said that when they took a job, that's the job they expected to get. When they get to schools, and that's not the job they're getting, they get frustrated with it. They come prepared for the job they committed to. And I think maybe we need to address, you know, substitutes need some backing as well when they're at school. So that will be all for this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now have Tim Miller, followed by Dan Merkin, followed by Christine Hall.
Good evening again. My name is Tim Miller. Been out for the last couple months with work, so I haven't been able to be here. So I wanted to talk about the referendum briefly. The information on the website is good, but I don't think it's complete. It says 75% is going to teachers to staff, 12.5% to charters, 12.5% to arts and athletics. The ballot measure does not specify those percentages. So they're not set in stone. And I've talked to a lot of people. Actually, I had a chance to talk to a number of teachers just this past weekend. I was at an event. And quite frankly, they don't trust it. And a lot of the public doesn't. They said it doesn't say that. So what's to say that next year, 10% is going to go to the teachers and the rest is going to go to arts and athletics? There's nothing that prevents it. It is a trust issue. We have 612 vacancies. We need to put money to filling those classrooms with qualified teachers, qualified paras, qualified subs. We need to put the money there before we put on extracurricular activities. Sports, arts, very important, they're great, but they're extracurricular. If you don't have a teacher in a classroom, extracurriculars are useless because you're not preparing the kids. The district is not doing its job. There are a number of issues, a number of reasons that teachers are leaving, and there are very few in the pipeline. And a big one is support. Teachers don't feel supported. They feel like they are ignored. If they raise an issue, it's downplayed. If they write a referral, it's downgraded. I talked to a teacher a few weeks ago who said that she was being hit and spit at weekly, if not daily. And the response was, well, these are young kids, they didn't have kindergarten, so we've got to just kind of work with it. I'm sorry, that's clearly a Class 3 violation, and it's being ignored. It's being downgraded to nothing. If you don't support the teachers, they're not going to stay. And ESE, because that's my calling now, chronically understaffed. Huge caseloads. They can't do it. They cannot do what they're supposed to do with the caseloads they have. And with this many vacancies, how many of those are going to be pulled as subs? It's not supposed to happen based on district policy, but it does every day. I know because I've talked to them. Every day it happens. I've also been told that this increase is a stipend and not a salary increase. So it's not guaranteed, even for the 4 years, that the tax will be in place. It needs to be fixed. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now have Dan Merkin, followed by Christine Hall, followed by Margaret Yarborough.
Hello, Dan Merkin. I just wanted to speak briefly on the parental notification policies and procedures that are going to be voted on later tonight. On whole, mostly support what's in the document, but I still have some concerns. And one of the concerns is that it's still not clear what the procedure is going to be to make sure that if a change in service or monitoring is noted, that if making a notification to the parent, it won't trigger some sort of possibility of abuse, neglect, or abandonment for that young person. And it's not real clear to me from the policy what due diligence will be taken to ensure that an assessment is done that would illuminate if a notification might possibly lead to that outcome. And so that is my concern, and I still haven't really seen it addressed in the policy. And that's why I wanted to bring it up again, is that there needs to be a procedure in place that will protect a student if they are concerned or have a real fear that the change in monitoring would put them at risk for abuse or abandonment or neglect. So that's all I really wanted to say. Other than that, I think the policy is okay. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now have Christine Hall, followed by Margaret Yarborough, followed by Daisy Yarborough.
Hello. My name is Christine Hall, and this is actually my very first Duval County board meeting, and I got up here to speak. So first I would like to ask if I win a prize for that.
No, but we appreciate the comments.
Thank you. So I am here just to comment on the new policy regarding the student walkouts. I actually my oldest is going to be a kindergartner this year. And so I am just entering into the school world, and I have been terrified of it for the last, really particularly for the last 2 years, because somebody up here mentioned that, things have gotten so heated and all the debates are so polarizing. And as a parent with an incoming elementary student, it has been kind of just horrifying to watch and thinking, I don't even want my kid to go to school at all. But that's not an option, and we don't live in fear. So here I am trying to get involved. And in regards to this policy, I wanted to bring up what are the criteria to determine what topic is deserving of a student's right to free expression in this way. And I think I'm just echoing some of what Rebecca said. But is it that the school administrator gets to decide and deem what topic is worthy of the time for this and the personnel to help support this? Or do they have to agree politically with the topic that the students are choosing to protest on or to walk out on? Which students will get preference if multiple groups of students decide they want to have a walkout? And as you've said, we're short-staffed as it is, but if we're too short-staffed to support multiple walkouts at one time, which students get preference, and how do you decide that? Without a line and a set criteria that's given by you guys, I feel like it puts the principals and could put the principals in the precarious situation of having to determine that on their own, how to implement this. As far as students being able to do this during the school day. And I think it could potentially open people up to legal ramifications of students saying, well, I didn't get the equal treatment that these other students got. Why didn't you approve mine and you approved theirs? So I think it's probably just about enforcing what we currently have in place and then seeing if that can be successful. So I would vote no on the new policy. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us this evening. We'll now have Margaret Yarborough, followed by Daisy Yarborough, followed by Ivy Sutter. I hope I got that right.
Good evening. My name is Margaret Yarborough, and I'm a mom to 2 wonderful kids. There are 3 books on the summer reading list for incoming 9th graders at Douglas Anderson. At least one is required with a push to read all 3. These books are full of CRT and in violation of the Stop Woke Act and cannot be taught in schools. I had hoped that there would be redeeming qualities to these novels, but unfortunately that's not the case. The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas is basically a playbook for Black Lives Matter, the 2020 riots, and CRT. The novel promotes, condones, and justifies violence against police, rioting, burning, and looting of communities, ripping police from vehicles, stomping on them, climbing on cop cars, throwing tear gas at police, as well as calling police pigs. It teaches black people that they are victims and oppressed. It teaches that white people and police are oppressors. It promotes white guilt and the idea that white people have white privilege. It teaches black kids that they should fear police and white people, and it teaches that violent activism is the only way to change a community. Every stereotype imaginable is in this novel. It's divisive, full of falsehoods and hatred for entire groups of people based on immutable characteristics. It's embedded with CRT from start to finish. All blame is on white people and cops for this black community's problems. This book justifies the selling and use of drugs and the joining of gangs. All 3 books ridicule Christianity and present incorrect theology. Policy 9.10, Speaker Protocol, says speakers will avoid the use of profane or vulgar language during school board meetings, which these novels are full of. The Hate You Give has around 90 F-bombs in it and uses the N-word a couple of times. It has very graphic language throughout. I find it ironic that I am not allowed to read excerpts from this book at a school board meeting, but my child is required to read and discuss it in class. Policy for Curriculum and Instruction states, in presenting controversial materials on an issue, the teacher shall present all sides of the question without bias or prejudice and shall permit each student to arrive at his or her own conclusions. These novels don't allow for this kind of critical thinking. These books teach kids what to think, not how to think, and are one-sided. How are they inclusive of whites, police, and Christians? I would like to know. Class discussions will surround these novels for the first few weeks of school. The Chief Academic Officer, Paula Renfro, clearly stated in a
Ma'am,
recent
please don't refer to people by name. Thank
workshop
you.
that all books made available to students are considered instructional material. Policy also states that all course materials in verbal or visual instruction shall conform to the requisites and intent of all Florida statutes and shall align to standards adopted by the State Board of Education. Again, these novels violate the Stop Woke Act and cannot be part of school curriculum, so please remove them from the school. The other two books are Born a Crime by Trevor Noah and A Long Way Down by Jason Reynolds, which I am not finished reading yet, but also look to be full of CRT and all kinds of other issues. So I really want to see these books removed now because school is coming right up and we have summer reading books that need to be completed. So, and my kids aren't going to read these books, so please fix that.
Thank you. We'll now have Daisy Yarborough, followed by Ivy Sutter, followed by Pat Vila.
Good evening. Good evening. My name is Daisy Yarborough, and I go to Lavelle School of the Arts. Tonight, I'm going to talk about suspension over minor versus major problems and a substitute being biased in my civics class. Earlier in the school year, when kids had to have a medical opt-out form to not wear a mask, the dean of my school threatened me with suspension because he said that my medical provider was not valid. This is an example of a minor problem, and I should not have been threatened with suspension. Then, later in the school year, the Lavelle Wind Ensemble went on a trip to Atlanta, and one of the girls went in the stairwell at night in the hotel that they were staying in. This is very dangerous, and she could have been kidnapped. The girl only got a referral and lost the privilege to perform at the concert when really she should have been suspended or expelled. This is a major problem in school. Why am I threatened with suspension over a minor problem such as masks, which have been proven to not even work, when the girl on this trip did very dangerous things and only got a referral? The other issue that I've had at my school was with a substitute in my civics class who is being politically biased. You have a policy that goes against that. The substitute in my class said to the class 4 biased statements. First, Floridians have no rights, which is very untrue. Second, the governor acts like a president. Third, you should move to California because they won't fire you from a job. And fourth, you should move to states north of Virginia. If a teacher or substitute is being biased in class, it can change the minds of children from their original point of view and or beliefs. My representative says kids first, no party politics, when in my class there is talk of biased politics by the substitute. Let me remind you of what Policy 6.85, Political Activities for Employees, states. No employee shall use his and or her position in any way to influence or attempt to influence students to support or oppose any candidate, party, or issue. So remember what I said about minor versus major reasons for being suspended and a substitute being biased in class. Follow the rules. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for being here. No audible applause. Thank you, Board Policy, but thank you, Daisy, for being here. Ivy Sutter, Pat Villa, and followed by Michael Anderson.
Hi, I'm Ivy Suter.
Thank you. I apologize.
No, most people get it wrong. I'm standing here tonight to ask you to vote no on Policy 5.27. I would ask that all of you please enforce your own existing policies before creating new ones. I ask that you not approve this policy because you would be allowing students to participate in political protests during instructional hours. As we've seen tonight from the superintendent's presentation, Duval County's latest report card shows substandard performance. All time must be used for teaching. 64 Cs, 10 Ds, charter schools decline in performance. Those are not scores to be proud of. And you expect us as taxpayers to pay more in millage. But at this point, an increase in millage will represent a poor return on investment. Focus should be on education and not politicization or politicization. It's all about leadership. And the results that we see all flow down from the top. And they flow down from these kinds of policies. If your path to success is based on, quote, equitable and comparable, you are on the wrong path, and you will continue to get these kinds of results and poor results. I have a background in restructuring, and I have restructured a big school district in my past. So I've seen the data, I see how it works. In summary, please vote no on 527. Thank you for listening. I appreciate it.
Thank you. And again, I apologize for the name. Pat Villa, followed by Michael Anderson.
Hi, I'm Pat Villa, and I also oppose the political or the protesting of children in schools as well. I think that we need to spend our time on academics, strictly academics only. But I also want to oppose the code of conduct change language to 13. I think if a child feels that there's a need to videotape an event in the school classroom, either be in the classroom or on the school grounds, that they should be allowed to do that. This could be an incident that is illegal and improper, and this might be the only proof that the child has of this injustice. So I think if a child feels that they need to videotape something, what's the harm in that? And along those lines, I think that cameras should be in all classrooms. This will ensure accountability that the proper school curriculum is being taught, that teachers are not freely adding their own agenda to kids. Homes have it, daycares have it, doggy daycares have it, so what schools should have it. Okay, concerning the parental rights bill, this is my third time here speaking about this. Teachers are not qualified to wear LGBTQ lanyards or refer to manuals. This is an actual psychiatric condition or thought process requiring professional help, such as a doctor. And as far as coming here, it seems like we keep coming here and talking about it. These are legitimate problems and issues that should be addressed in a intelligent manner. And I recently have read a book with Pete Hexa, and his quote is, "The school boards are like parents with Nerf guns to change a fortified machine gun nest on a high hill." So, and then a recent incident involving a school board member was at a children's park in Atlantic Beach. She was speaking against the Supreme Court ruling, speaking in favor of abortion, was proclaiming white supremacy, and inciting the crowd to go to private homes regarding this matter. This person is not appropriate for this position and should not be reelected to the district board, District 2.
Thank you.
That's inappropriate behavior,
Thank you.
madam.
Thank you. We will now be finishing up our speaker cards with Michael Anderson, and then we'll do those that waived speaking.
Hi, hey everyone. My name is Michael Anderson. Address on file. Basically, as a person with a disability and a stutter, I believe these calls for the limited time when it comes to issues on our schools is again very hurtful for someone like me who may or may not need extra time, and then also it is Disability Pride Month this month as someone who's basically been a substitute teacher for the last several months in our ESE classes all across the district. I believe we need to do more as far as giving support to our paras, to our ESE students and parents as well, to where we actually have families come up and talk about the issues and have students with basically our with varying disabilities actually acknowledged, to where it's not swept away and it's not all of that. And then when it comes to the revision of the support guide due to current law, I believe this outing clause to where students have to, or teachers have to basically send info home to parents regarding whether it be a name change on a name tag or basically other things like that is again very dangerous and definitely needs to be addressed again as a teacher in the classroom. I am very concerned for our LGBTQ students and teachers. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes our speakers. Karen Olson waived her speaking time in opposition to policy 5.27. Mason Minion waived speaking time in opposition to agenda number 63. Josh Nathanson waived speaking time in opposition to policy 527. And Patricia Beetler waived in support of the Florida Bill of Rights. And that concludes our speakers.
Thank you to all who came and gave public comment this evening. We now will move on to comments from parent organizations. If there are any representatives from parent organizations here, you can start to make your way forward. I don't think I see any out there. All right. Seeing none, we don't have a representative from the student government summer break, and now we're on to employee organizations. If there's any representatives from employee organizations who wish to address the board, you may now come forward. Come on down. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Good evening. David Bryan, Assistant Business Manager, IBW Local 177. I represent the maintenance employees for Duval County School Board. And now it seems that I'm going to start representing school safety assistants as well. So I'm loving every minute of it. Anyhow, I'm going to play the same broken record over and over for you guys. We're losing badly in the maintenance department. We can't attract people, qualified people, and it gets down now to even painters, carpenters. We're not talking about, people who have to have a license to do their work. We already know about that. Electricians, plumbers, HVAC. Right now the district has just informed the HAR mechanics at Station 3 that they will be moving to Station 1 because there are only 10 of them covering the district. 10 HAR mechanics to cover 196 facilities. Where do we make that up? Well, we call a subcontractor. Market rates, people. You're not, you're going to pay one way or the other. You're going to pay one way or the other. If you're calling a subcontractor, you're going to pay market rates on any carpenter service, any HVAC, plumbing, electrical, painting, all of it. Having a well-staffed maintenance department is very important to educating our children. Is, you know, they don't have a good building to learn in. If teachers don't have a good, properly operating classroom to teach from, it's a big problem. Now, I saw how we're very, very low, or we have a high amount of openings for teachers. I challenge you all, if you go and take percentage of teachers that we're short and go up against percentage of maintenance personnel that we're short or we have lost, and I would say that the percentage is much higher in maintenance losses. And it's a big problem. It's a very big problem across the entire system. And it's not just here. It's not just us, and we understand. We're trying to do what we can to provide a good wage for the people who are taking care of our schools and taking care of our kids. It's their schools, you know. It's just, like I said, you'll hear the same thing from me every time I come up. The HAR is a huge problem right now because it's hot. This is Florida. It's going to stay hot. It stays hot well into October. So that's a big problem. We've only got 10, and then as my associate, Mr. DeLong, spoke earlier, he stated that when you get a contractor or when you contract out the work, they come for what is wrong. That's it. If you get stopped in the hall by a teacher or a principal or a vice principal and says, "Oh, wait, my room's hot, can you look?" They don't do that. They're not going to do that because they're there for the thing that they've been called on. Whereas our maintenance people will go in, check it out, even if it turns out that there's nothing broken, and it just makes the teachers and administrators in the buildings feel better that they had just looked at it. We won't get that anymore. Also, and I don't like to speak to rumor, but a lot of the maintenance employees that I represent think that there's and people will make up things as they see it, you know what I mean? So they feel that the district wants to just let them retire out, the people that we have, and just, you know, not get rid of anybody, but just let them, through attrition, just go and continue on through subcontracting. I tell them that's not true when they call me and ask me these questions. I tell them it's not true. I've never heard of such a thing. But that's the thought in the heads of our craftspeople that are out there in the field trying to take care of our facilities, taxpayers' facilities, students' facilities, teachers' facilities. So we hear about the teacher shortage, and we're with you. We completely understand. A school's job is to educate students. We got it. But if the school is subpar, if the school can't get repairs quickly, if the schools are suffering, then there's no good place to teach. The maintenance department used to pride itself on being number one in the country, not the state of Florida, the United States of America, this school district, for completion of work orders and timeliness completion of work orders and ability to take care of a problem with expediency. We're down to number 8. And I think that's amazing, seeing how many people we are short. we have a problem in this country with a shortage of workers. We all know that. We can see it every day. And the $15 raise that we all got, or that my lower pay scales got, come up to the $15 range, they are grateful for it as they can be. And I'm grateful that you all decided to do it. But, there's always the but. They can take off, if we have guys who mow grass. They're lawn maintenance, that's what they do. That's what their job is, groundskeepers for the school board. They get outside, they sweat. It's hot, it's dirty, it's nasty. It's $15 an hour. That's good. Any of them can go into just about any fast food restaurant here in town and make $15 an hour. It's hot, but it's not as hot. It's an air-conditioned restaurant, you know. It's not as nasty, the conditions. That's the reality that we're facing right now. We need to try to figure out a way to fix the problem. And it happens, and it has been happening, and it's continuing to happen, that we have people who are leaving the district, as I said last month when I spoke to you, to go and get a job making more money. Sometimes, well, I know of several that did, that got a $10 an hour increase. Better benefits, maybe not as many days off, but if you have to use your days off to work a second job so that you can make ends meet, it's not a day off, is it? And I don't want to sound like I don't believe that she deserves it, because Dr. Green deserves everything we give her. We've seen the grades that the schools have gone up, the levels that, just amazing. A lot of good progress. But we just voted Dr. Green, or we offered Dr. Green an 11% raise. Now, she didn't take the whole 11%. She only took 9.5-ish. Offer us a 10% raise. We'll love you forever. I'm serious. It's about all I have for you this evening, unless anybody wants to talk, or anytime. You can call me. I'll get in touch with you all. I'll be in touch. We're not quite into our negotiation period yet, but we're headed there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bryant. Any other employee organizations in attendance? Seeing none, we're going to move on to approval of the minutes. That the Duval County School Board approve the minutes for the meetings listed in the agenda item. May 16, 2022, board meeting, CP and KC, Kelly Coker Daniel, and Cindy Pearson. June 7, 2022, regular board meeting. June 14, 2022, board workshop. June 21st, 2022, agenda committee meeting. June 21st, 2022, board workshop. June 21st, 2022, policy handbook review committee meeting. June 22nd, 2022, special board meeting, student expulsion hearing. And I will ask for a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by board vice chair Coker, and seconded by, man, I'm all over the place, Anderson. Any discussion? Seeing none, call for your vote. By your action, you have approved this item 7-0. Now moving on to the consent agenda. Are there any items to place on the consent agenda or items for discussion? Seeing or hearing none, ask for a motion.
So moved. Second.
Second.
Moved by board member Pearson, second by board member Anderson. Discussion? Any discussion? All right, seeing none, call for your vote. By your action, you have approved this item 7-0. Now moving on for items for discussion. Moving on to the first section is academic services, public hearing and vote modifications to the 2022-23 student progression plan. Dr. Green, can you read the recommendation?
That the Duval County School Board conduct a public hearing on the revisions of the 22-23 student progression plan.
Now opening the public hearing. Is there anyone who wishes to speak? Close the public hearing. Ask for a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Vice Chair Coker, second by Board Member Jones. Any board member wishing to speak? Seeing none, call for your vote. By your action, you have approved that item 7-0. Moving on to the, staying in the same section, academic services, revisions to the 2022 Student Code of Conduct. Dr. Green, can you read the recommendation?
That the Duval County School Board conduct a public hearing on the revisions of the 22-23 Code of Student Conduct outlined in the attached summary. That the Duval County School Board, following the public hearing, approved the 22-23 Code of Student Conduct.
We'll now open the public hearing. Is there anyone who wishes to speak? Seeing none. Oh. This is revisions to the 2022-23 Student Code of Conduct. No. 2.13.
In the student code of conduct.
Is that underneath it?
It's in the code.
It's underneath. Yeah, it's in the code. Okay.
Yeah?
Yes, this is it.
Okay. All right, Margaret Yarbrough. And I oppose the revision to the Code of Conduct under changed language 2.13, which prohibits the use of device to capture images or video of school board employee, student, or agent without their permission. There is no expectation of privacy at school unless one is in a private place, such as a bathroom or a dressing room. We had several instances this year where we could not prove because there was no recording that a teacher was making politically biased statements in the class. We also had other issues with a science teacher that was kind of just went off the deep end and stopped teaching in class and turned all the desks around for like a week and didn't bother to tell the parents what was going on, and I had to reach out and, really nothing was done. But it becomes difficult for students and teachers to protect themselves from policy violations or abuse when evidence cannot be recorded. So this is why I ask that you vote no on 2.13. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak to this item? Seeing none, close the public hearing. Ask for a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Board Member Anderson, second by Board Member Jones. Are there any board members wishing to speak? Board Member Hershey.
Through the chair, I would like to ask the superintendent or her designee to share with the board again and the public why this recommendation was made, these changes were made. Can't even talk. Why this recommendation for changes was made to the board.
Through the chair to Board Member Hershey and the board, the recommendation is being made because students, one, although they are allowed to have their cell phones on them as their person, just like any other aspect of school, we do not videotape in the classroom. Part of the teacher contract requires permission, and so part of that is related to the teacher contract. The other portion is that there have been instances where students are recording in locations that privacy is considered, such as a locker room. They thought they were recording something, but they actually caught students in not an appropriate location. Students changing clothes, and as well as incidents that happen at a school, two students are fighting, those recordings tend to be posted, and the constant complaints we get about student, whether it's a fight or something happening at a school, being posted on websites, and the school district no longer has jurisdiction. We have no authority to have those videos removed. And that is the purpose of the main reason of why we added this piece. If Mr. Simmons would like to come up, if there was anything added to that, I would like for him to come up.
Through the chair, if I may, while he's coming
Please.
up and can think about it, or you can add, my conversations with some principals has been disruptive discipline issues in schools. I'd just like to hear about that as well.
Before you speak, Mr. Simmons, we also, Todd, I forgot that piece. Thank you for reminding me, Ms. Hershey, is that some students bait students to fight just so they can record it. And students want to be recorded having a fight, therefore then posting it online. Yes, the school uses the video as evidence of what's happening, but it was the whole recording of the video that started the whole incident. So I will now turn it over to you, if you want to add something.
Through the chair, in reference to adding additional comments to that, I think the superintendent and board chairperson Hersey hit the nail on the head. We're really trying to curtail what students record to ensure that the environment that students are going to school in remains safe. So we did have instances this school year, as the superintendent has already described, where acts of recording did happen in places where they should not have happened, and as well as recordings tend to stem other advents of poor behavior. So, for example, students recording to bait or goat someone into behaving in a way that they should not behave in school, which causes another student code of conduct infraction. So as the committee met and deliberated on this item, it was thought that adding this particular language will assist us in ensuring that students are able to come to school without fear of being recorded, as well as our teachers being recorded against their will.
Through the chair, I have a follow-up. Could you share with us, please, Mr. Simmons, you mentioned the committee, who was on, what was the makeup of that committee?
We have multiple committees that convene to ensure that we're getting all aspects of engagement, from our teachers to our administrators to our regional staff to our community engagement members to our parents. A plethora of individuals actually have input into what happens with regard to changes in our student code of conduct. So it's not just a small entity. This process goes on for several months, and we ask those folks to come out and participate in our committees. And as a result, at the end of our community constituency meetings, we then determine what's going to be the recommendation to the superintendent as well as to the board.
Through the chair, I have one final question. I promise
Please.
this is the
No,
last
you're
one. Through the chair to Mr. Simmons, could you share with the board and the community what role you perceive social media plays in, I'm going to say, bullying of other students, if you will? Is there an adverse impact for recordings that might take place at school being posted to social media? Is there an adverse impact for students who might be the victim or target of that?
Through the chair, certainly the role of social media has changed with regard to how we address student incidents. But I think to your point, not only incidents that happen in school, but also incidents that happens outside of school and find their way back to the school environment, which poses an additional opportunity for students to be bullied and or harassed. So we have rules and guidelines in place to curtail both, whether it's coming from the outside or whether it's happening at school, and we have an opportunity to address it. But it does create an environment that we really have to pay attention to with regard to our students being bullied and harassed through social media.
You sure you good?
I'm good. Good.
This is a follow-up for
Oh,
Mr. Simmons.
Actually, I had wanted to ask the question about who was on the committee, because I think it's important for the public to understand this is not a district-based, I mean, that we include multiple voices, but Board Member Hershey beat me to it, so we're good.
Excellent. Board Member Joyce, you wanted to speak to this item?
I do, thank you. I respect the position of the district wanting to bring this item before the school board. But I have some concerns about it. As a former teacher, I think that it's going to be incredibly hard to police it. And then you're going to have a sense of students, you know, there's 99% of the time they're recording something, whether it's their lunch and they're putting it on TikTok or whatever they're doing, it's really no big deal, versus the 1% that it becomes an issue. And so the concern for me is just going to the extreme and saying absolutely no recordings. If we have an issue with fights and the students are posting them to social media, I think the policy can state that there's discipline for a student who records a fight and posts it to social media. Also in this policy, it says on school property. No recording on school property. Well, if you're at a football game, are we saying that you can't record a student or a faculty member or a volleyball game? This happens. It's just going to happen. And so setting up a policy for failure is not prudent, in my opinion, for the board. I would ask that we consider going back and doing some work with it. But the policy as it's written here, I don't believe it's enforceable, and I think it's going to upset parents that their students cannot have their cell phones and they cannot record different things in the school system. So I appreciate the position of the district. I appreciate you bringing that before us, but I think we need to do some work with it to make it equitable for everyone.
Member Anderson.
I just have a quick question. Was this, I was not at the workshop. Did we have this conversation during workshop? I had to leave early.
Which conversation around?
I'm wondering if Board Member Joyce brought up her concerns about this policy during workshop.
I don't believe so.
It was a
Not
long
specific
meeting.
to that.
I know, it was a long meeting, I had to leave. Well, I mean, I guess I'm wondering whether or not there was an opportunity for the district to address this particular issue before it came to us for a vote.
I do recall talking about this policy and disagreeing with the policy during the committee meeting. I can't recall exactly what I said, but I did have concerns about it at the board meeting, at the board workshop.
So thinking about that concern, Dr. Green or Mr. Simmons, the addressing of recording at a sporting event versus a student recording in school, is there a discrepancy between, a delineation between those two things?
Through the chair, to the chair, currently, students in schools are not allowed to have their cell phones out anyway. Their cell phones are to be placed in a secure place. However, there is latitude with teachers to allow students to utilize cell phones for instructional practices and et cetera. So we did not, the committee did not anticipate an issue with enforcement because we've already been training and making the necessary recommendations around how students utilize cell phones and the like. So instituting this policy certainly gave us additional leverage in terms of students who were inappropriately utilizing the cell phone as a way to record teachers, also as a way to record fights, as a way to record when they should not have their phones out without the permission of the instructor anyway. So certainly we've had football games and we've had basketball games and other extracurricular activities where students obviously have cell phones, and the better part of discretion is valor. So certainly we are using great judgment in terms of how we train our staffing to go about implementing and executing this particular code of conduct offense.
Thank you for that. Any other thoughts or discussion from the board about that? And that is a piece to a larger conversation that you all, there's a lot of other smaller changes and bigger changes that kind of happen. But once again, going back to, there was a committee, a very diverse committee across many different types of roles and sectors that kind of got involved in this. So I appreciate us having this robust discussion up here as well. Are there any other discussion points or thoughts from the board? All right, seeing none, I'm gonna go ahead and call for the vote. And this is on revision to the 2022 Student Code of Conduct. Oh. Oh, we're still on that part. Okay, let me go back. Are you up for public comment as well? Okay.
Public hearing was closed.
Yeah, public hearing was closed.
Yeah.
We were on the board wishing to speak at that point.
Prior to Board Member Hershey speaking.
I didn't close it.
Pretty sure you
Did I not close? Do you remember? I gavelled it closed? Okay. We did gavel it closed, and then we opened it up for board member discussion, and that's when you saw Mr. Simmons come up. Were you speaking to this item?
So you can.
You have to reopen the public hearing.
We'll go back. Let's,
Move to reopen.
can we move to reopen? Council, can we just move to reopen? Okay, we'll just move to reopen the public hearing. No, you may speak.
My name is Harriet. I'm concerned that the board is taking an issue and muddling it with a different issue. As you've heard, parents are concerned about things being done behind their backs and not having the ability to prove it to the board and being able to get the support they need to have their children taught in an appropriate environment and manner. But you guys are turning that into a situation where you're saying, oh, well, this is for the safety of our students. But the reality is you're not going to be able to prevent people from using their cell phones. So really in essence, what you're doing is you're preventing people from having the evidence that they need and not effectively stopping what you claim to be stopping. And I'm also concerned that if you're saying you want to start a protest in schools where you have children who are so easily moved to fighting just for the simple fact that they're going to be recorded, that seems very misguided. And that's something that should really be looked at with more depth and more thought process, because unfortunately that doesn't make any bit of sense. That's horrid policy making. Thank you.
Thank you. Are you up for this as well? Okay.
I'm Pat Villa again, and she pretty much said it all, but I just want to ditto that it's being too broadly interpreted, and I like what School Board Member Joyce said. I think that's the appropriate thing to do, that we need to just do it on a one-by-one basis, not, do it over, assume everybody's no to everybody. And because, like the young lady said, if there's an event that takes place, and this has happened several times with my granddaughter, that the teacher was inappropriately behaving, and we had no proof of it. And the principal sided with the teacher. So this is important for justice for the kids, and to know that they have rights as well, and not to just swarm over some kids who are just, for the fun of it, throwing stuff on social media. Just address those kids individually. If they go on social media, find out who they are and deal with them separately. But don't totally disband it altogether for kids who see something inappropriate happening or something illegal happening, that they can pull out their cell phone. That should be allowed. That happens all over the country, everywhere. And that's how some of these cases get proven that these people are innocent because of cell phone video. Okay? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak to this item? Public hearing is now closed. Ask for a motion. We need to go do that again. Ask for a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Vice Chair Coker, second by Board Member Jones. Any board members wishing to speak? Now that we've heard other comments.
I've said my piece.
I
said my piece.
Say your piece. Okay. I will say once again that there was a group of folks who got together and they saw issues that were pervasive and were happening over and over, and is the reason why this policy is put into place. So do just want to recognize that committee when we're thinking about these policies.
I do have a question.
Yes.
So, through the chair to Dr. Green, under the current policy, if, again, I don't think that we can enforce this completely. So there will be some children that will use their cell phone, nothing will happen to them, but we will just pick and choose the students that we will actually, punish because they've done this. And so if a student is found guilty of defying this policy, what are the consequences that are going to happen? For example, if a student is recording a fight and they post it on social media and they're, baiting another kid, what are the consequences for that? Are they the same as a student who maybe records a teacher saying something, or are they the same consequence?
Through the chair to Board Member Joyce, with all of our code of conduct, it's a menu. So I will ask Mr. Simmons to share what level this is and the menu of discipline options that are available to an administrator.
Thank you.
You should have just stayed closer. It's all right. Welcome back.
Through the chair to Board Member Joyce, as the superintendent has communicated, within our student code of conduct, each code of conduct infraction has gradual consequences based on the severity of the code of conduct infraction. This particular infraction is a Class 2 infraction. They're in classes, Class 1 being a minor offense, Class 2 being an intermediate, Class 3 being very serious, and Class 4 being zero tolerance. This particular one is a Class 2, that's why it's 2.13, I want to say. And with that, the school administrators have a menu of consequences that they give for the students on their first offense doing it. As if they do it again, they'll get a graduated consequence, and if they do it again, they'll get an additional graduated consequence, again, based on the level of the infraction. The first infraction typically is communication with parent, conference, possibly some restorative practice. The second offense would be something along the lines of possibly a day or two in ISSP, after school detention, and you get my drift. And the third offense would be something in terms of additional days in ISSP, working your way out, restorative practice, and consequently, and I can't remember right off the top of my head where suspension or out-of-school suspension would come with this particular offense, but it does come at a graduated level.
Okay, thank you. Again, I want to reiterate, if a student has their cell phone out and they're videotaping someone in a locker room changing their clothes, and it's the same first-time offense for a student who just records students in the classroom dancing, it's just not, it's not fair, number one. And number two, I'm going to say it again, I think this policy needs work. I have seen, what I'm afraid of, what I'm concerned about is you have a teacher and, you know, she might let one student get away with recording something silly, But then on another day, she is not having a great day. She's, you know, in a bad mood or something, and she's going to write that child up for recording something silly. It just, I feel like, and I'm going to just land on this, it's just better if we go back and reevaluate the policy and put some very straight and strict guardrails around this, because I think we are opening ourselves up for a lot of problems if we keep it in the language that it is.
Board Member Anderson.
Yeah, I'm wondering, in my time on the board, we haven't had a conversation where we would amend a code of conduct. And I'm wondering if that's even permissible, or if that's what Board Member Joyce is suggesting. I mean, I feel, I guess, a little frustrated, for lack of a better word, that this isn't an issue that we were able to get resolved before sitting here at the dais right now. And I feel like as a governing body, these are the things that we should be working with the district to get resolved before they come to us for a vote. And I'm wondering if there's anything that's even within our power other than to vote down the entire student code of conduct. I guess the question goes to Mr. Poole.
Good question. Can we vote that down? And then the other question is, of course, we do have the ability to have this, vote it, yes, and then workshop it, and then bring it back. We always have the ability to do that anytime that we want to. So I know that's an option, but Mr. Poole, so to answer Board Member Anderson's question.
And to make sure I understand, the question is whether or not you can vote down the entire matter that's before the board tonight.
Can it be amended?
Yes, it can. You can amend. As long as it's within the public notice, which it is. I'm sorry. Apparently the microphone was too far away from me. But yes, it can be amended.
Vice Chair.
Through the chair to Office of General Counsel, hasn't the rule always been substantive change? And so with this and I don't know that it does or doesn't, does this constitute a substantive change? And if it does, then we would have to renotice and have the hearings again. And that's my concern. And I would go back to what the chair just said, that I have concerns about the amendment. Now, I'm not saying that you can't ask to have that task force reconvened at some point, sooner or later or whenever. I just want to be careful. We publicly noticed something. We said that it was going to say this, and I worry that if we're making a substantive change, that we need to go back to and go through the process again. And I'm not saying we shouldn't go back. I'm not saying that. I'm just worried about the substantive change piece.
Board Member Joyce.
Is there an opportunity for us to take out that piece, the language of just the videotaping, to go back to a committee to rework that piece and then go ahead and approve the rest of the student code of conduct?
That's a good question. And I'm wondering too, is it even need to go all the way back to committee? Because the committee brings it to us and we workshop it, so we're able to make any changes we need to in that sort of intermediate step, and then it comes here. So I'm wondering about that as well.
Yeah, and the critical question is, what has been noticed? What does the public have notice of? And is this in keeping with the notice? So, and I don't have the notice in front of me, so I would need to be able to pull up the notice. If you notice, trying to think of an analogy, if it's different in kind, then there's a problem. But if it is along the lines of what has been noticed, but just a clarification or a modification of that, then that's okay. And candidly, I was doing a research project for one of the board members when this came up, so, and was conferring with somebody else over at City Council about something similar. So if it is, if you're talking about doing something that is merely a modification of what's been proposed, then that would be permissible.
not a modification. I guess the
Board Member
question
Jones.
to the chair is, amending it out would not be a modification. It would be removing it for additional consideration. I think that Board Member Joyce brought up some concerns, but I think that needs to be addressed by the committee. I hate to usurp their recommendation without their input. And I have had parents call me about the posting of videos with kids are fighting, and they make that. I wish we could just not have in one text in schools, because they make those arrangements, and they go and videotape it and put it on social media, and then we don't have any control over that. So there is a problem there, and I think this begins to address it. Is it perfect? I don't think it is perfect, but I think it does begin to address a major concern that we have at some of our schools where fights are orchestrated simply to videotape it.
And through the chair, let me hasten to add, I'm very cautious about things. So my rule of thumb is, if in doubt, hold off. Let me research it, because if it's possible to resolve it by not taking that action right now, with the understanding that you can consider it in the future, that's generally my default position anyway. So if there's a question about whether or not it's been properly noticed, and whether doing this would run afoul of Chapter 120, my recommendation would be err on the side of caution. Don't make the change right now, and then take it back up during workshop and what have you. Hopefully that makes sense. But that's certainly the safer thing to do, if in doubt.
Or Vice Chair?
Through the chair to Dr. Green, or potentially a member of district leadership. At this point, we're July 11th. These types of things principals have to be trained, assistant principals have to be trained, items have to be put out for print for first day of school, everything has to be set up in the system and whatnot. What are we looking at timeline-wise? How much do we back you all up? There's some former principal, former regent soup. There are a lot of logistics that have to happen as a result of our decision. And so timeliness of decision is also at issue here.
Through the chair to Vice Chair Coker, you are correct. There is a timeline. Printing the code of conduct, which it's supposed to be shared with students at the beginning of the school year, and they have to sign off that they've gone through the code of conduct. The easy part is it does get posted on our website, but that does not take away that we still have to have it printed for school distribution.
Through the chair back to Dr. Green, if we were to pass it as is, but at some point go back and have the committee reconvene, could that then be pushed at any changes? I think I recall in the past that there have been times changes have been made mid-year for different reasons, often state legislature changes. And so those have then been pushed out and everything's been updated as well. Is that correct?
Through the chair to Vice Chair Coker, that is correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Board Member Hershey?
Thank you. Through the chair, I think to Mr. Poole, it is my understanding, since I have been on the board, that if it is passed, or if a person votes yes, then it can be brought back by any person who voted in support for reconsideration. If someone votes no, you cannot bring the item back, but the person who voted, anyone who votes yes, has the ability to bring an item back. And I just wanted to clarify that. So if it did pass tonight, anyone who voted yes in its current state could say, I would like to talk about it in the future, this specific topic. If you voted no on it, you could not bring that up. Unless someone who voted yes could bring that up. And then I guess my second question through the chair actually to Board Member Joyce is, do you have tonight an amendment or recommendations on changes in verbiage as it now states, or is that something that you think would be a conversation to be had later?
I would be happy to make an amendment. I think there's two major issues that I have. If you are videotaping someone while they are in the locker room or in a private area, changing their clothes or showering or whatever, that's obviously an issue that needs to be disciplined. If you are recording to instigate a fight, we can go back to social media. We can see those students that are doing that. I would be happy to make an amendment for those two clauses to be the only form of the only way a student would be disciplined is if they violated either one of those situations.
Vice Chair Coker.
Through the chair, back to Dr. Green. Our MOU does not allow, at this point, for videotaping in classrooms, correct?
Through the chair, through the teacher contract, and this is exactly what it says.
Thank
The
you.
use of tape recorders or any other mechanical, electronic, video devices is expressly forbidden unless all parties present agree to such use. So it's already in the teacher contract. You can't videotape in the classroom,
Okay.
videotaping a teacher. So, and it's also in the code of conduct that students are not to have their phones out unless it is related to something academic.
So again, I would just caution the board again on a logistical issue that now we've got printing. And again, I'm not saying it not be revisited at some point. Please don't misinterpret. But we've got an MOU that's in effect for this school year, already in place. We've got a scenario where we've got printing and whatnot. And we would, Dr. Green and the team would have to go back to negotiate that piece. We are, a month away from school opening. Anyway, I bring up those logistical items for everyone.
I appreciate that. I'm going to move us along. I know that in the committee, teachers were on it. The union was on it, correct?
Board. Yes, sir.
Okay. So I know that's a longer conversation. It's a legal conversation that I know will take longer than tonight. The question though is if we vote yes, or just to push this as it in its current state, and this may be to council, is it procedure that it goes back to committee, or are we ultimately, can we workshop it in our policy workshop? That's my question, because that will determine how long it would take to get this back.
Through the chair to the chair.
Right.
I'm sorry, you were looking at
Right.
Mr. Simmons. No, the answer is no, it would not need to go back to committee.
Right.
Because at this point, committee has turned it over and it's a recommendation from the superintendent
Right.
to the board.
Right. And that was sort of my initial comment in the beginning is we're the ultimate body that gets to decide. They've given our recommendations. We workshopped it. And now we're here to vote on it. So I'm going to move us. Any further discussion on it?
Can I just make one point?
Yes. One point.
I'll just say the one piece of it that gives me pause personally, other than there's a redundant word record that hasn't been stricken as I look at the policy, is the extracurricular sports, those sorts of things. I mean, I really do think that there is a problem there with enforcement that I can totally understand needs to be resolved. And I think we could include language related to contracts or MOUs with our bargaining units and include that language here that really sets those parameters and still be able to say, what is punishable or what does have a consequence. Because I think the language here is not clear on that.
I think that board member Hershey.
Through the chair, is there any reason, I don't think I've heard any reason from Mr. Poole as to why there could not,
Make that adjustment.
if, I'm just going to say Board Member Joyce, and she brought it up, if Board Member Joyce wanted to recommend or to move an amendment, why we couldn't take that up tonight unless
now.
the board just does not have an appetite. It sounds like we could make that amendment tonight so that we could vote it up or down and that the district could move forward to have things printed and ready to go for school.
So let's, Dr. Green, did you have your hand up before we?
Through the chair to address Board Member Anderson, the policy as it relates to your phones not being out is only during school hours. So that policy does not state, well, when you're at a football game or basketball game, you can't have your phone out. We know, everybody has their phone out for things that are outside of the school day. But this is related to, it kind of connects to that policy. One, your phone's not supposed to be out during the school day. And if it is out, then you're supposed to have permission. Secondly, if you have it out, you're not to be recording individuals. So I don't think this is meant to, oh, if you're at a basketball game, you can't have your phone and record.
And I totally, do
record.
you mind? In response, I totally understand sort of the spirit and intention of that. But when I read the words here, it does say, shall not use cameras or any other recording device to capture images or videos taken on school property, the bus, or at school-sponsored event to record. And so it's, you know what I mean? It's just, it's a little bit difficult. We don't say in there, we don't have any other boundaries in there. So, I mean, I think if we said, well, we can't say the bus during the school day, and what happens if there's a school-sponsored event during the school day, you know? So, I mean, it just gets a little tricky, which is why I don't feel like I'm prepared to make an amendment to the language right now, because I think we need to just be thoughtful and make sure that this is an enforceable policy. That's where I'm hesitant to amend.
Dr. Green. See you getting ready to say something. No?
I'm trying to have my wheels turning as to a possible
Resolution.
amendment to try to codify what we're trying to accomplish, but also satisfy individuals. However, it, as Board Member Hershey said, it can come back for anyone who votes in the affirmative, and we will bring it back as just that one item to readdress.
Yes, Board Members.
That's what I wanted to clarify. We can vote yes tonight for this to go through so the district can start moving forward the processes they need in order for it to be ready for school. Whoever, one of us who votes yes, and I'd be happy to do it, can bring it back. We can wordsmith, work it out in a workshop or a policy review committee, not a workshop, policy review committee, right? And then whatever's passed can be an extra sheet of paper put into the policy, or it can be deleted and then changed in the digital version, and we move on. So we can, it sounds like, from what I understand, and this is my first kind of experience with this situation, we can vote yes, we can bring it back, we can work on changes, and move forward.
That is correct.
Okay.
Yes, and we're not just, it's not just that one, it's the whole student code of conduct that we're voting on too, just to get us back to that. That's the piece underneath it. So
One piece.
One piece. So I'm gonna go ahead and move us, and any other folks wishing to speak?
Call the question.
All right. Call for your vote. By your action, this has passed 6-1. Knowing all the caveats of what we said, we can go back and amend and bring it back at any time. So we'll get that on. If folks want to have that conversation, we can discuss that. Moving on to, just still under academic services, we are now under public hearing and vote procedures to develop library media center collections. Dr. Green, what is your recommendation?
That the Duval County School Board approve procedures to develop library media center collections.
All right. Open the public hearing. Is there anyone who wishes to speak? All right. If other folks are going to speak, if you can go ahead and stand up for me so I know, so I don't close it. prematurely.
I just want to speak on behalf of the public. My name is Rebecca Nathanson, and it was a really interesting conversation that was just had. I'm pleased with the Library Media Center collections procedures. I received an email during the period of public comment from a school board member, which was my first flag that, like, some board members aren't even respecting enough to listen to people while they're making public comment. And then you all workshopped something, somebody was absent, and then she had issue with this being discussed again after you had the chance to hear from members of the public on a topic.
Is this related to this public hearing?
In a way, because
Okay.
I'm sitting here thinking that if members of the public show up to speak and you're telling us you already have your votes set, your minds made up, what is the point? This is just a show. And I'm just shocked at what I've heard tonight, but I'm glad that the conversation evolved and that there hopefully will be rediscussions on that prior issue. The memo of understanding might be unconstitutional. People have a right to use a tool if they are collecting evidence
This is not
of a
on the
crime.
topic of, you have to stay on the topic of the public hearing. if you would.
Library books, policy, the new procedures to develop media center collections, I'm all for. Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak to this public hearing? All right, you cannot come up and no more public comment once we move into debate, so just want to make sure folks know that. All right, we're closing the public hearing. Ask for a motion.
So moved.
Moved by Board Member Pearson, second by Vice Chair Coker. Are there any board members wishing to speak to this item? Board Member Hershey.
I just wanted to, through the chair to the superintendent, could you explain if I was a parent and I had a concern about a library book, what the procedures would be for me to express my concern?
Through the chair to Board Member Hershey, we have a form. That form is on our website, as well as unfortunately, the training from the Department of Education won't happen until January, but we are training our media specialists to make sure that they understand a parent can submit that form. That form, they state the book, the concern they have about the book. Then that form goes to a committee. That committee, who must be led by a media specialist, or we do have a district media specialist, to go through the procedures of determining whether that book would be removed or not. And that person who submitted the form of concern will be informed of the decision of the committee.
So through the chair, I did click the button that says Media Center Reconsideration Form, and it does take you, and it pulls up all the schools. So you have to identify the
Yes.
school, so they know which, because it's possible that there's a book at one school that's not at another school. But just wanted to clarify that so people know how to get the information to the district if there's a concern. That's my only question.
Thank you for that clarification. Board Member Anderson.
Dr. King, can you clarify, will there be a difference? Is it possible that there could be a difference from school to school?
Through the chair to Board Member Anderson, if you're saying, is there a difference in books?
Permissible books.
It really will be more from grade band to grade band. There may be a book that is permissible at the high school level that is not permissible at the middle school or elementary.
I just want to make sure that there's not a situation where we have a media specialist at one school that says, I don't believe that this is, appropriate, or we mark it as not appropriate for third grade, but then at the next school, third graders have access. So this is going to be a district-wide process that the decisions will be made.
Through the chair to Board Member Anderson, if the committee determines that a certain book should not be in our library, it would be removed wherever it is, wherever it's located, if the committee deems it not appropriate. But it doesn't mean that a book at a high school that we deem appropriate, we wouldn't expect it to be in an elementary or middle school, but it isn't everybody for themselves making a decision. It is very challenging, and as I stated, our media specialists have not received the training from the Department of Education at this point and won't receive it until January.
Yep, please.
Can you clarify, does this process also apply to our charter schools?
Through the chair to Board Member Anderson, no, it does not.
Okay. And lastly, will we need to hire additional staff to accommodate this new process?
Through the chair, to Board Member Anderson, I am not looking in the direction of Ms. Renfro, but currently only elementary schools have part-time media specialists. We do not have media specialists in middle school or high school, so we will be relying heavily on our district media, but there will be a potential that we may have to hire additional media specialists.
Thank you for those questions. Any further questions? Board Member Anderson? Good.
No, I don't like the idea that the limited media specialists that we have may have to limit their ability, availability, and access to students in our schools with this process, and/or that it's going to take additional funding from us to ensure that this process is, which is it's a fine process, but it didn't come with any money as a requirement, and so it's going to cost the district, to implement it, and it's not even going to be directly impacting our students.
Thank you for that. Other items, other discussion? Yeah, this is unfunded, sort of a mandate coming down, so it is that, and it will take time, and it also depends on how many folks use the site and do all of that. So it is something to think about, and we'll know more as we get into it. Other folks? All right, we'll go ahead and call for your vote. By your action, you have approved that item 7-0. Now moving on to the section with the Chief of Staff, public hearing and vote revisions to Chapter 2, Board Policy. We did already address 2.26. That got moved to the beginning of the agenda. But Dr. Green, can you read the other part of this?
That the Duval County School Board conduct a public hearing and vote to adopt the recommended revisions and/or additions to the following policies in School Board Manual, Chapter 2. Policy 2.38, Audit Advisory Committee.
Public hearing is now open. Are there anyone from the audience wishing to speak? Policy 2.38, Audit Advisory Committee. Seeing and hearing none, closing the public hearing. Ask for a motion.
So moved.
Moved by Board Member Anderson, second by Vice Chair Coker. Are there any board members wishing to speak to this item? Hearing, seeing none, call for your vote. By your action, you have approved this item 7-0. Staying with the Chief of Staff section, public hearing and vote revision to Chapter 3, Board Policy. Dr. Green, what's your recommendation?
That the Duval County School Board conduct a public hearing and vote to adopt the recommended revisions to the following policy in School Board Manual, Chapter 3. Policy 3.41, School Climate and Behavior.
Public hearing is now open. Anyone from the audience wishing to speak? Seeing none, closing the public hearing. Ask for a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Board Member Pearson, second by Board Member Jones. Any board members wishing to speak to this item? Seeing none, call for your vote. By your action, you have approved this item 7-0. Moving, staying with Chief of Staff, public hearing and vote revision to Chapter 5, Board Policy. Dr. Green, what's your recommendation?
That the Duval County School Board conduct a public hearing and vote to adopt the recommended revisions to the following policies in School Board Manual, Chapter 5. Number 1, Policy 5.09, School District Notification of Parental Rights. Number 2, Policy 5.24, Student Rights and Responsibilities. Number 3, Policy 5.27, Student Assembly. Number 4, Policy 5.61, Use of Restraint and Seclusion with Students with Disabilities.
Public hearing is now open. Anyone wishing to speak, please come forward.
Hello, Margaret Yarbrough. I oppose changes to policy 5.27, student assembly. There were 6 DCPS schools which facilitated or allowed protests back in February and March for the incorrectly labeled Don't Say Gay bill. These protests were allowed by administrators in violation of several policies as well as standards for professional conduct. Acknowledgement was made by at least 2 board members that policy was not enforced. So now, instead of holding schools and district personnel accountable for these violations, the board is voting to change policy to accommodate student protests and walkouts during instructional time. This will disrupt learning time and influence other students. I don't want my kids to be coerced into becoming political activists during instructional hours. Additionally, teachers will still be held responsible for what kids are learning, which just doesn't seem right or fair to me. How will you enforce policy 10.10 prohibiting discrimination and harassment and 10.20 anti-bullying policy against those who choose to stay in class and not participate in these protests? Our principal allowed for multiple policy violations this year. So how will she be held accountable for implementing these policies, since it's going to be the principal that's responsible for implementing them? There is a double standard with enforcement of district policy. I've seen it all year long. DCPS dishes out punishment only to those it disagrees with, like with the masking issue. I mean, my child was threatened with suspension right away, first time. DCPS needs to enforce existing policies and do it equally. Do it equally, enforce your current policy. Don't lower the standards so that, nobody's breaking policy. That just doesn't make any sense. So please vote no on 5.27. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Darlene Miller, and I am up here to ask you to vote no to 5.27. I think the whole thing is just too vague, honestly. It says, students seeking to express their ideas and opinions through peaceful assembly demonstration must obtain prior written confirmation of the school's ability to accommodate the request. Then it further on says that written confirmation must be obtained through the principal. I guess my concern is that there's no real guardrails on this. Principal at one school could say, yes, you should, protest this particular whatever. Principal be at another school says, no, we're not doing that. What topics would be approved? There's no guardrails there. Let's have a walkout. I don't like pizza every Friday. Are you going to say yes to somebody on the opposite side political spectrum as you are? Everybody should be treated fairly. Everybody should be okay. Is the teacher going to stop teaching? What about the children who stayed behind to learn? To me, it just has nothing in here to guide what's going on from school to school, teacher to teacher. Are teachers just going to sit back and do this while children are out there protesting, even though there's still children left in the room, and wait for those children to come back? Are the children who leave to go protest then going to come back to the children who didn't leave and start saying stuff to them? I think you need to look at the policy and have a district policy in place before we start having all of this protesting. It's sometimes it's not about what side of the political spectrum you're on. Sometimes it's not about the politics. But maybe we need a little bit more guidance, because some of us have seen this side, and it doesn't really look pretty sometimes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Tim Miller again. I've got a couple concerns with 524 and 527. 524, you're striking the section that says students who participate in a boycott, walkout, sit-in, etc. will be basically disciplined. Back in my day, we called that skipping. You didn't go to class, you walked out of class, you were skipping. But when that happens, what about the kids that are still there? Darlene mentioned this as well. If there are kids in that classroom, that teacher needs to be teaching. The other kids, if they're going to go protest, that's fine. But you can't punish the kids that are still there and need that educational time, okay? Especially for the ESE kids, you know, every minute is important for those kids, and any direct disruption of half the class walking out, that can throw off a kid for a day, 2 days. I know, because I have one. And if you're going to allow walkouts for one thing, you've got to allow them other ones, okay? I know a lot of this started with the Parkland shooting and students going out protesting guns. If you had someone that says, you know what, I'm going to protest for responsible gun rights, would that be allowed? You know, if you don't allow it, then you're bringing politics and you're bringing your opinions into it, and you're not going with the spirit of the policy that says, hey, responsibly protest. 527, again, seeking approval. What's the criteria? If you allow it for one, you need to allow it for all. And it also says the principal is responsible for the administration and the implementation of the policy. Danger. This needs to be district level. We all saw with COVID, some principals had their schools locked down so tight, kids couldn't go out on the playground. Others, you can go out on the playground. Completely different for the same issue. If this isn't district level, you're going to have one school that says, yep, go for it, go protest, whatever you want. Another school says, we don't have the resources to accommodate, you can't protest. It gets even more tricky if that principal says you can protest this, someone else wants to protest something else, and you say, no, we don't think we have the resources to do it, then you're treating them unequally. And if it becomes a political type issue, that causes other issues. So I think it's vague. It needs to, like Darlene said, there need to be some guardrails around this and ensure that there's equity across all opinions on this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Harriet. First off, what on earth? This is a board of adults. And I'm pretty sure I'm younger than most of you here, but I'm here to tell you that this is the most ridiculous thing I've heard of. Why on earth? We've seen the Summer of Love in America, and we saw where that got us with the mostly peaceful protest. You guys just admitted yourselves that you cannot keep your kids in line because they have a cell phone out and someone baited them to go start a fight. What do you think is going to happen when you then permit them to go start protesting at school? When they should, and I'm sorry, you spent how long telling us about your shortages in school, your failing schools, you finally got them out of F schools when you kicked them out because they couldn't come during COVID. Their grades went up when they started staying home because they had to stay home from COVID. Their grades went up. I'm sorry, this doesn't make any sense. You've got failing schools, and now you're going to send your students out to go protest during the time that they should be getting an education. How does that make any sense to you guys? How does that make any sense? Where's the logic here? What is the purpose here? What's the purpose of a protest at an elementary school? What's the purpose of a protest at a middle school? What's the purpose of a protest at a high school? They can do that outside, but they can't get their education from their teacher outside, can they? They're not going to go home and eat dinner with their teacher to give them their education when they could use their free time to protest if that's what they so choose to do. But when they're in school, your job is to facilitate them getting an education, not social woke justice. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ivy Suter here again. I echo what Harriet said. It's so much nonsense. I oppose policy 5.27. Why can't you just enforce the policies that already exist? Why are you wasting time creating new ones? Do you wonder that your results are so poor? 50% literacy? This is Jacksonville, Florida. I mean, we're in Florida. We're supposed to be a leader. This school district is not a leader. It's so much nonsense. I can't believe it. I'm highly educated, but if I were here in Duval County, I would have never gotten into the schools I went to. It's disgraceful. It's so much nonsense. They need to maximize instruction time. How do you think they're going to learn? Why do you think you have a 50% literacy? And it's not just this policy, it's all these policies. You waste so much time on nonsense. This is ridiculous. And meanwhile, Paris is burning. The school district is burning. Very, very poor results. And as a taxpayer, I'm ashamed to support it. Please, do not vote this policy. Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak? Are we going to close the public hearing? Ask for a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Board Member Pearson, second by Vice Chair Coker. Are there any board members wishing to speak? Board Member Hershey, and then Board Member Pearson.
I have a question. So in 5.24, the language that was struck, it looks to me that it appears again in the third paragraph of 5.27. Is that correct?
It is. That's correct.
Okay. I just wanted to make that clarification that
Yes,
that was not removed from policy, the consequences, that it was just moved from 5.24 to third paragraph of 5.27. I think that student protest and walkouts is something that's a struggle for schools and principals, and the principals that I have heard from, I think that if we did not have them during the school day, it would be beneficial. My question is to the chair, to Mr. Poole, is there, I'm going to use the word an infringement of first constitutional rights, to right of free speech? Are we running into any problems with that?
As drafted,
Well, if we didn't pass this, if we did not have some sort of guideline or allow student protest or walkout, are we running into any constitutional issue?
yes, in 1969, just by brief recap, in 1969, the U.S. Supreme Court during the Vietnam War faced a situation where students in Iowa, sort of in the breadbasket, were wearing black armbands to school in protest of the war. And the question was whether or not they had the right to do that, and that's Tinker versus the Des Moines School District. And the court said, yes, there's a constitutionally protected right of speech, free speech, that students have. They don't give that up at the schoolhouse gate, I think is the way they put it. Then recently, last year, you may recall, there was a student who was a cheerleader who posted on social media some terrible things, bad language about her cheerleading coach and school and all this. And the question was, can you punish that student for the off-campus statements? And I think it was Justice Breyer who wrote the opinion, the majority opinion to that case. And he, in analyzing that, he went back and said, oh, by the way, Tinker, we indicated that if it is a peaceful protest and peaceful speech at school, you can't constitutionally prohibit such conduct or speech during the school day. And I can pull up the case and read the quote. But it reiterates that there is generally, so to have, the problem is if you have a bar against the speech, you've got to show what the Tinker court said is there would be a substantial disruption in the school, in the provision of educational services. So then this is designed, the idea is to try to put some parameters on that to give administrators, and ultimately, I think as written, the superintendent or her designee, the chance to consult with the principal of the affected school to set out some parameters for the students and their ability to engage in assembly, you know, and to protest, rather than have a across-the-board bar. Hopefully that makes sense, but it's an attempt to place some controls over it while at the same time not having a per se bar. Because the question with it is, as I've expressed before, is that with a per se bar, and an example I've given before is when I was in high school back in the Stone Ages, during homecoming week, we were running around doing floats and decorating the hall. And if we place a per se bar on speech, say, when nobody's in class doing anything anyway, how do we justify that? So that's what the draft that's before the board is sort of designed to do, is to walk that balance.
Thank you for that explanation. Board Member Pearson?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm trying to think how far back I want to go
Yeah.
with this. So, I, again, have been on the board not 2 years yet. And in the 2 years, I've had 2 schools in District 3 that have had some pretty significant student demonstration activity. And that is what piqued my interest to understand what our current policy was and to try to make an effort to, interestingly, put guardrails on the policy. In conversation with legal counsel, I learned about Tinker, and it seems from that conversation that having a policy that says no student assembly or demonstration at school, bell to bell, on school property, is not an option for us. So, there's that. I've also received a lot, a fair amount compared to some other issues, of emails yesterday and today. I've had phone conversations with folks, constituents, and some not in my district, about our current policy, who are questioning why we would replace a policy rather than enforce it. And I think there's some misunderstanding that the current policy that we have actually bars student demonstration. So I went back and looked at it after a fairly long conversation with somebody. And the way that it's written is that any student who participates in an activity which creates a disturbance or interferes shall be deemed guilty of misconduct and be disciplined. So we do not have a policy, as far as I'm reading it, we do not have a policy that says students are not allowed to participate, students can, that's not the current policy that we have. So we are not replacing a policy that bars student engagement with one that does. What I was hoping to do with this is to put guardrails and flesh out and give more guidance to our building administrators than we currently have. So, because I think what we have is vague enough that it certainly can be interpreted differently from school to school. So the hope that I had in wading into this policy writing exercise was to actually make it clearer and more uniform from school to school, because I have observed within my own district that it is not uniform from school to school. So that is 5.24. That brings us to 5.27 and what we have worked on. And I wanted to just pull out some parts of that that we put into this policy to flesh it out and give the guardrails and give the guidance. So one of the things is prior written confirmation of the school's ability to accommodate the request. That's the school's ability to put time, place, and manner restrictions on the activity. I think about, interestingly enough, Parkland, which not only kind of started this new era of school walkout and student activism, but also really threw us into a new era of school safety and concerns. And I do have a concern that not controlling time, place, and manner puts students at risk. What happened with the last round of this was that there was a student, I believe, in Flagler County who took exception to one of the bills going through the House and Senate and put out a call on TikTok, which is a social media platform, that this day at this time we all walk out of class in a show of solidarity against this bill that's going through. From a safety point of view, I think that is not what we want to do. And so as we were talking about this in our committee, we talked about, and we've worked through this a lot, we talked about lunchtime. Would lunchtime be the acceptable time to do this? Because that's not an instructional time. And if students want to give up their lunchtime and walk out and walk back in, well, there are problems with that, with staffing and students. Some students really rely on getting that meal at school, and so there are problems with that. And then we talked about 15 minutes before the first bell or 15 minutes after the first bell. And what we ended up in the committee doing was taking those specifics out of the policy and leaving it to each building administrator to determine the time that works best within that school with the schedule and with their ability to staff. Knowing that staffing can be an issue, we put in a permitting process, for lack of a better term, with 2 days prior notice so that the school can call on district staff if they need to, security can have can ensure the safety of students who are walking out, if that's what their assembly is, and I'll get to that in a minute. The next part of it is the principal, and the language here is obtained through the principal following consultation with the superintendent and or his designee. So the principal is the person in the building who receives the initial request in consultation with district staff. What I like about that is that the district will now have an overall view of what's happening and can provide support, as opposed to having unexpected pop-ups. And I would much rather be proactive in this situation than to be reactive. And so that's kind of where that's hitting. The form, okay, so backing up a little bit. The board is responsible for policy, and the superintendent and her staff are responsible for procedures. The policy is like the bones, and the procedure is like the muscle and the flesh that goes on the bones. And so everything that all of the ideas and everything that will happen is not contained in the policy. There will be procedure for it. My recommendation all along, and to the extent that I'm not getting out of my lane, I would like to be involved in the procedure, but I don't know if, again, I'm new, I don't know if that's within my lane, but I would like, out of my lane. Okay, so I'll just say now this is what I'd like to see in it. I would love to see on the form actually a menu of First Amendment options that's not limited to a walkout or a demonstration. Some examples of that could be requesting a town hall meeting that could include parents and staff, because we do those, with district staff or with board members. I would be so happy to do that. We could include a community service project. One of the options could be a poster campaign on the school walls to bring awareness. I think you see where I'm getting. I think there are other ways besides a walkout. I personally don't feel that walkouts and demonstrations are effective in changing people's minds. But that certainly could be there on the menu. I've said I think this standardizes the policy across the county. It gives consequences for not following the policy. In this, we provide a safeguard for students and staff who don't wish to participate, and that is reports of discrimination, harassment, or bullying involving participating students or non-participating students and staff shall be addressed in accordance with Board Policy 10.10, prohibiting discrimination and harassment, and Board Policy 10.20, anti-bullying policy. That actually did happen in one of my schools, and I got a lot of text and a lot of emails from one of these instances where students were kind of harassed and bullied for not participating. So I'm especially sensitive to having that in there. That is acknowledged in this policy. Lastly, it is the principal who's responsible for the administrative implementation of this policy in consultation, and the principal's job is to ensure that the information contained in this policy is provided to students annually through the Code of Conduct meetings at the beginning of the school year. So the accountability for this does rest with the building leader in the school. And that, again, is the job of the superintendent and her staff to make sure that that is happening. I believe with, again, being proactive rather than reactive, with knowing in advance, there is a better chance for them to follow up or to be on site and make sure that these things are happening the way they're supposed to. However, you're welcome to email me. If you're in a district school, 3 school, email me and let me know if something is not going the way that I've explained, that I think the way that it's going to go. And if you're not in a District 3 school or you don't live in District 3, then email a board member. And we can do well, at least what I do, is ask questions, send it through constituent services, and you get a response about that. So anyway, I'm going to stop.
Thank you, Board Member Board Member Anderson.
We have had a lot of conversation about this during workshop, and I appreciate, as always, the robust conversation with my fellow board members. I have read through the emails that I received and listened to public hearing and commenters here tonight. And I think that there are some spaces after listening to that we can possibly make some clarifying amendments to accommodate what we're hearing. I'd like to offer an amendment. My question would be to Mr. Poole. I really have 2 amendments that I'd like to make. Do they need to be made separately, or can I make them together?
I would suggest making them separately. I think that's cleaner.
Okay. So I'd like to move to amend the policy to include following paragraph 3 before paragraph 4.
You're on 527.
I'm on 527. The following statement, which I can provide to our staff. In accordance with policy 6.85, no employee shall use his or her position in any way to influence or attempt to influence students or support or oppose any candidate, party, or issue. Such prohibition shall include, but not be limited to, any form of advocacy or opposition in a classroom or school setting or other school-related student-teacher relationship. as one of our young speakers pointed out tonight, this exists in policy, and I think it's just a matter of including it here so that it's clear. It's already a part of what we do and our expectation, but so that there's not any misunderstanding, I think we can just insert it here tonight. So I'd like to offer that amendment for your consideration.
Clarification, where does it fit in one more time?
I will say, at reading this as a kind of immaterial adjustment, I think we are missing some Roman numerals in this policy. So, you know, unlike everything else in policy, we usually have sort of paragraph 1, 2, 3, 4. So this would be, it would be a new paragraph 4 and move the current paragraph 4 to a paragraph 5.
All right, it was moved to amend to add that section.
I'll second that.
Second.
We have a second by Board Member Hershey. Do folks need to see that to vote on that? Or are we good with that, the reading of the?
I would like to see it, please.
All right.
It's policy 6.85.
So we're pulling policy 6.85 as almost a refer back or just as a duplication of?
So the way that I have it written here, it says in accordance with policy 6.85.
And then you quote it.
And then I just quote the policy, as was read to us here this evening. And I can send that to.
It's 6.85, right?
Mm-hmm.
Through the chair, I'm pasting that into an email to everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Poole, can you please include our staff so that they can get it updated in the record?
All right, while this is happening, I'm sorry, but I have to run out for a second. I'll be right back.
All right, that has been sent. I see it come through. Do you see it?
Yes,
Y'all
seen
see
it.
it? It has been motioned in the second. We'll read it again, and then we'll vote on the amendment, and then we'll come back, and if there are other amendments as well. And let me know, I can take a hand vote if we need to as well, and just read it.
Are we just reading?
Chairman, could I get the initiation and second.
Yeah, motion by Board Member Anderson, second by Board Member Hershey. All right, so it's up. It's been motioned and then seconded for the amendment fitting in before the final paragraph here that would read, in accordance with policy 6185, no employee shall use his or her position in any way to influence or attempt to influence students to support or oppose any candidate, party, or issue. Such prohibition shall include but not be limited to any form of advocacy or opposition in a classroom or school setting or other school-related student-teacher relationships. That is the amendment that is being put forth and the one on your screen to be voted on right now. Call for your vote.
I have a question.
Yes.
We are voting on the amendment.
Not the full thing yet.
Okay, so, but this says public hearing and vote revisions to Chapter 5 board policies. So I feel like I'm thinking that if I'm voting on this, I'm voting on the whole item, not the amendment.
Should be voting on the amendment.
Yeah, we're voting on the amendment.
It's the motion to amend according to exactly what he put in.
We'll make sure the record.
We'll make sure the record reflects, and
It's the
we're
motion
gonna
to
do
amend.
another vote, so. You're,
If this is for the amendment,
for
it
the
doesn't
amendment.
specifically
Yeah,
say
but
that, and normally when we do an amendment, we take a hand vote. So that's why I'm a little confused.
yeah, sometimes we try to do the non-hand vote when we can, so we got the language, so we'll make sure it's in the record. So this is voting on the amendment, not the full Chapter 5 board policy yet. By your action, you voted up the amendment 7-0. Now we're back on discussion. There's a
She had
additional.
a second amendment. I
What's
thought
that?
she had another amendment.
She does.
Oh, okay.
So thank you for supporting that. I would like to offer a second amendment to paragraph 2. It reads, currently, students seeking to express their ideas and opinions through peaceful assembly demonstration must obtain prior written confirmation of the school's ability to accommodate the request. And then goes on to say that written confirmation must be obtained with the principal following consultation with the superintendent or his or her designee, at least 2 school days in advance of the event. I know that in our conversation, and as Board Member Pearson brought up here tonight, that there is a desire for the board to stay out of specific procedures and to stay in our lane. But I think that just for clarity, again, in the policy and being really direct in our request, I'd like to move to amend to add a sentence between the first and second sentence. So this would be a new second sentence that reads, make sure I get it here. The superintendent or designee will develop a standardized procedure and form for requesting written confirmation. So that way we are clear as a board that we are directing and asking the superintendent to create this procedure, and that it's not sort of left to chance to be school to school, that there is a form that would be used standardized across the board. So that is my motion. The superintendent or designee will develop a standardized procedure and form for requesting written conversation to be inserted into paragraph 2, the second sentence.
Written conversation?
Written confirmation.
Confirmation.
So not striking any sentences, adding.
Correct.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Vice Chair Coker. Any discussion on it? You have that written?
I sent it.
Through the chair, I just emailed that second one to everyone.
Perfect.
That's not the right one. Oh, that's the right one.
Okay, so it's been moved and properly seconded. add a sentence after school's ability to accommodate the request, and you're adding in, the superintendent or designee will develop a standardized procedure and form for requesting written confirmation as an addition.
Discussion.
Any discussion? Oh, it's up, but any discussion first on that?
Second Amendment.
This is the Second Amendment, yes. Well, not the Second Amendment, but the Second Amendment. Right. No further discussion. Call for your vote. And once again, you're voting on the amendment, not the whole policy yet. By your action, you voted up this amendment 7-0. We're still on discussion for this with two now amendments that have now been put into place. Any other discussion or items to add? On the item as amended. Thank you. Yes, Board Member Joyce.
Going back to the policy.
Right.
We have had robust discussion concerning this policy, and I have shared, and I will share again, my concern for allowing students, even with the amendments, even with adding the extra language, for allowing students, student-led protests during the school day. If it's from the first bell to the last bell, it disrupts the student. It disrupts the school day, the operations of the school. And so I can't support this. If I'm a teacher, and which I was, and I have a protest in my first period class or my last period class, it's taken away from instruction time. And it can't be done in just 10 or 15 minutes. That's just not real. It's not feasible. I appreciate the comments from the employees that are in our school system that have concerns with this. I have concerns with this. I've talked to many teachers and principals that have concerns with this, and I think it's a disruption to the school day. And besides that, I don't think that parents are actually willing or they want their children to participate in this during the school day. Any form of walking out or sitting down or whatever. If the board or the districts they want to come up with a policy before school or after school, that's different to me. But during the school day, I just don't think that there's any room for us to add this, to change this policy. And so I support the policy as it is currently written.
You're talking about 5.
Not the, yes, no, start, yeah.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Board Member Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's something that there's no guarantee there will be a protest. There's no guarantee it will be. And the form that protest may take can vary from school to school based on the legal guidance that we've been given and the fact that school pep rally is disrupted. They leave the class doing. I mean, every school has, at some point in time, the class education process has been disrupted. And if that's the case, legally, I don't see how we could, based on legal guidance, we can deny the protest that the students may want to participate in. So I would support it based on the fact that, one, it doesn't have to take a direction of a protest. The principal can provide some alternatives to a walkout. That walkout does not have to occur if given guidance. And I think that we have the guardrails to protect us so that we don't get sued later on because we denied someone that right to protest during the school hour. Thank you.
Board Member Joyce.
So my problem with that comment is if we are allowing one group of students to walk out because they want to, make a statement about whatever issue is on their mind, and we don't allow the other student group to walk out, to me, you have to make it fair for everyone. If a student group comes to the principal and says, we want to plan a walkout or whatever they want to plan, if you can't say to one student group, yes, we're going to allow this to happen, and to another student group, no, we're not, or you have to do it differently. And so I think this creates a slippery slope. And students are really smart. They are going to understand in really short amount of time that they can put together walkouts for whatever issue is relevant. And it could end up taking a toll, a real toll on the instructional time that we have in our schools. And so I appreciate that, but I don't see that you can treat one student group one way and another student group another way. So that's...
To the chair, there's nothing in here that says we can deny one group and permit another group from protesting. And there's nothing in here that's saying that the principal or anyone else would have the authority to deny one group that wants to protest and permit another group to do it. It just allows a process by which you can have a peaceful protest. The school administration is given notice and it's done properly. That's what we're putting in place.
If the student group says we want to walk out, and the principal, I'm just clarifying, and the principal says, yes, your particular issue, we're going to do a walkout. And another student group comes, because it does say sit in, so, there's different ways that you can protest. I don't want it to be at the district or the principal's discretion on what kind of protest can take place. Do you understand what, you follow me? If it's a walkout for gun rights or let's just use this last one. If it's a walkout for Don't Say Gay Bill, and the principal says, yes, I'm going to work this out, we're going to put this procedure in place and you can do that. And then another student group comes up and says, well, we want to do a walkout for the parental rights and education, and that's, that political piece. And the principal should not have the discretion to say, well, this group can do the walkout, but this group has to do a sit-in or something that's different from another group. And that could end up becoming a problem. So, but at the end of the day, I'm going to fall back to where I began. I fundamentally, as a educator that's worked in this system, and as a parent who has 5 children who have gone through this system, I do not support any sort of walkout or any of this during the school day. So that's where I stand.
Thank you. Board Member Pearson?
I think we could throw up enough hypotheticals to kill anything tonight. So I'm going to call the question.
Question has been called. Call for your vote. Yes, call for your vote on revisions to Chapter 5 Board Policy as amended.
As amended.
Thank you.
Chairman, could you tell me who initiated and who was the second for this vote?
That was a while back.
I called.
Pearson and Coker, is that correct?
I think that's
I
right.
believe
I think that's
Thank
right.
you.
seconded.
Right. Fire action, you have approved this item 6-1. We're still on Chief of Staff. We're moving on to public hearing and vote parental notification of change in support services procedures. Dr. Green, what's your recommendation?
That the Duval County School Board conduct a public hearing and adopt the parental notification of change and support services procedures.
I'm now opening the public hearing. Does anyone wish to speak to this item? Seeing none, close the public hearing. Ask for a motion.
Second.
Moved by Board Member Anderson, second by Vice Chair Coker. Are there any board members wishing to speak to this item? Yes. Board Member Anderson, then Board Member Hershey.
Board Member Hodges, you have a question? Go ahead.
I do. I was paying attention, but I actually thought we were towards the end. I was like, oh, we got another one. The one thing I wanted to clarify through the chair with the superintendent is that everything in the parental notification of change in support services aligns with the new state law.
Through the chair to Board Member Hershey, yes.
That was my question.
Thank you for that clarification. Board Member Hershey. Board Member Anderson.
I just wanted to point out that on page 4, section 4, there is a brief statement that does read, notwithstanding anything to the contrary above, district personnel may withhold the parental notification required in section 3 above if a reasonably prudent person would believe that disclosure would result in abuse, abandonment, or neglect, as those terms are defined in statute 39.01. There was a question about that earlier. This provision in the notification provides for that. The notification process.
Thank you for that.
Just through the chair, can I just ask the superintendent,
Yes.
does that align with state law?
Through the chair to Board Member Hershey, that is state law.
Okay.
That is the exact wording that is used in state law.
All right, I just wanted to highlight that because I understood the first yes, but I just wanted to be sure that that wasn't something that the district had arbitrarily put in there, and I appreciate you for clarifying that that is already state law.
Other thoughts or questions on this item? One quick question for me. I know that this is in connection with the LGBTQ guide that was there, so just want to make sure folks know what this is versus the guide, because I know I got questions that folks were blending the two.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to make sure folks understand what this is versus what the guide is.
Through the,
Dr. Green.
sorry.
Nope.
I was speaking.
Go ahead.
Through the chair to the chair and the board. This is part of state law that required school districts to put the procedures for parent notification in the board policy. So this is related to anything that is under that state law about parent notification. It is more than the LGBTQ guide.
Got it. Thank you for that clarification. They're not the same. One is, they speak to each other, so to speak. Other thoughts or questions, discussion on this item? Seeing none, I'll go ahead and call for your vote. By your action, you have approved this item 7-0. Still within the Chief of Staff section, public hearing and vote revisions to Chapter 8, Board Policies. Dr. Green, what is your recommendation?
That the Duval County School Board conduct a public hearing and vote to adopt the recommended revisions to the following policies in School Board Manual, Chapter 8. Number 1, Policy 8.12, School Police. Number 2, Policy 8.21, Behavioral Threat Assessment Teams. Number 3, Policy 8.22, Involuntary Mental Health Assessment of Minors.
Now opening the public hearing. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to speak?
Good evening, again. Just a quick, first if I could, Board Member Hershey, thank you for pointing out that the language was in another section back on 5:24 and 27. I appreciate that, I missed it. All right, so on 8.21 on behavioral threat teams. Section 2, each behavioral threat assessment team shall include persons with experience in counseling, instruction, school administration, and law enforcement. Wonderful, but you're missing something. ESE. ESE kids are especially vulnerable, especially when things don't go right, especially on the autism spectrum. So I think somebody needs to someone on that team for each school needs to have an ESE certification or some type of background in that. I'm on the SAC at Atlantic Coast, and when this was being put together, I made sure that, under Principal Spalding at the time, that there was an ESE person on that committee for that very reason. But I think that needs to be across the board, because like I said, one little thing can set an ESE kid off, and if it's a active shooter type situation or something where the kids are supposed to shelter in place, you need someone that can deal with someone like that and understand the ramifications of that. So I would encourage you to add something for an ESE person, especially with all the focus on the mental health right now. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak from the public? Public hearing is now closed. Ask for a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Vice Chair Coker, second by Board Member Jones. Any discussion from board members? Board Member Hershey.
Through the chair to Dr. Green, based upon the comment that we just heard concerning ESE, looking at this policy, is there anywhere in here that you see that needs to be added specifically? I don't want to just make the assumption that it's in policy, but where in here would that clarifying statement go regarding ESE?
Through the